Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Daily Gwei Refuel, where we recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host Anthony Sassano and today's the 12th of March 2023. Alright everyone, let's get back into it after 2 weeks of absence here. Apologies for not doing a refuel on Wednesday or Thursday last week as I said that I would before I went to Denver. Unfortunately, I got very sick, I got COVID about a few days into being in Denver. Not surprising considering how many people that I kind of interacted with and shook hands with. I mean, yeah, not surprised at all that I got sick. I'm still sick right now, still have COVID. My voice, you can probably hear it in my voice right now, is not the greatest and I'm having coughing fits every now and again, but I figured I need to do this. It's going to be a long episode. I'm budgeting for 2 hours right now, but I can easily see it going longer than that. The tabs that you see on my screen is one of 4 different Chrome windows with similar amounts of tabs. So there is a lot to get through, of course, and I'm going to be going through them basically from when the news happened. Usually when I do the refuel each day, I'll bunch up the news into their own categories. Like there'll be a layer 2 category, a DeFi category. Everything is basically uncategorized. It's just going to be happening as it happened over the last 2 weeks. So I will repeat myself a few times because there'll be news that came out and there'll be follow-ups to that news that came out a few days later and all that stuff there. But anyway, first of all, what I'm going to start with is my ETH Denver recap. Going to spend a bit of time on this because there's a lot to talk through. Going to try and keep it kind of short-ish because I don't want to kind of bore you guys for too long about it, but I think that there is a lot to talk about when it comes to what I experienced at ETH Denver and how I think it affects the industry going forward. All right, so first off, let's start with the Daily Gwei meetup. So obviously, as a lot of you know, there was a Daily Gwei meetup that happened in Denver, organized by a community member in the Discord channel, Outsider Analytics. So that big thanks to him for organizing it, and it was a huge success. We had, I think, over 100 people. There were people coming and going during the night. It was hosted from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. on the 2nd of March, the Thursday night there. It was amazing to meet all of you. Honestly, it was the highlight of my trip by far, to meet and to put kind of like faces to the Discord names and to meet a lot of you that I had no idea were even out there. And you said that you'd been watching my show from day one, which is just crazy to me. So it was really humbling. It was really awesome to meet everyone. So thank you to everyone who came out to that there. We all had lots of fun. We all had lots of great discussions. I also met a lot of you at the conferences, as well. So many people. I mean, I would had to have at least kind of met and shook like over 500 people's hands, like at least. And the crazy thing is the numbers at ETH Denver were so much more than that. So there were just so many people, but, I was walking through the main venue and every, 5 meters, I got stopped and someone said, hey, and talked to me. And I loved it, honestly, absolutely loved it. Some people ask me, doesn't it get annoying that I get stopped all the time? It's like, no, I mean, honestly, I don't care to be like a celebrity, but I love when people come up to me and say, hey, and basically thank me for my work and say that they follow me and watch my stuff every day. It just warms my heart, honestly. It's why I do what I do. The Daily Gwei is a public good, right? It's free. It's just out there for people to get enjoyment out of, get value out of. And when people give me the direct feedback saying that they get a lot of value out of it, they love the show, that means the world to me, of course. So yeah, that was the meetup there. Now, moving on to, I guess, the general conference. It was massive. This was the biggest ETH conference by far, like in history. So to give you some context here, last year at ETH Denver, so ETH Denver 2022, in February at the old Sports Castle venue, I confirmed that the numbers were around 10 to 15,000, right? And obviously that was way too many people for the little venue, which is called the Sports Castle, that the ETH Denver had been hosted in historically, but that's how many people were there. And that was, I guess, like just coming out of the bull market. So there was still obviously a lot of tourists around, but yeah, that was a lot of people back then. And then my last ETH Denver was 2020 before COVID happened. So that was also at the Sports Castle. But I would have to say there was maybe 2,000 people in total there. So obviously the community has grown very big since then, and obviously grew through the bull market and everything like that. And ETH Denver has basically become the Ethereum community's Burning Man, so to speak. It's where everyone goes to. Obviously, being based in the US, it draws a lot more people than other conferences based elsewhere because the US obviously is a very big hub for crypto people. But now we come to ETH Denver 2023. How many people? You probably heard numbers being thrown around. I was able to confirm with relative, I guess, accuracy on the numbers that were there at ETH Denver at the main venue. It was around 25,000 people all up, which is insane. That's so insane, guys, for a few different reasons. One, as I said, biggest ETH conference ever by far, bigger than last year's ETH Denver, which was, as I said, 10 to 15,000 people there. Wasn't able to get exact numbers on that, but I kind of collaborated those numbers with, corroborated, I should say, those numbers with a few different people. So 10 to 15,000 there, and 25,000 this year. Now, obviously, this year there was a completely different venue. It was no longer the Sports Castle. It was something called the National Western Complex, which is basically a stadium. They do a lot of other events there, not obviously just crypto events, but it was an absolutely massive kind of venue. It easily housed those 25,000 people. The line, I think that the biggest line that I was in was really just a registration line on the first day, and that only took about an hour. And I'm pretty sure I went in peak time. So that was the longest line that you would have seen there. It was much better run this time around. There wasn't lines to get in. You could just walk in. Everything was fine. There was no Wi-Fi. I think that was the biggest issue people had, and getting any kind of cell reception in the actual venue was impossible because there were so many people in there. It was the cell tower obviously got overloaded. But yeah, 25,000 people there. Now, obviously, given how many people were there, how many people were at the venue, everyone was making comments like, look how many people were here in a bear market. And I kept hearing that over and over again. And I'm like, you know what? I have a kind of running thesis here, and hopefully this running thesis doesn't crash the price of ETH to zero, because it's going to be a little bit of a bullish case right now for Ethereum. So I get that people will obviously comment and say, this is it's a bear market. Look how many people are here. Imagine how many people are going to be around in a bull market. But honestly, I think at this point, Ethereum as an ecosystem has transcended bull or bear markets. Now, I'm going to back this up with a few kind of facts and anecdotes here, of course. But I think the biggest kind of supportive, evidence for this argument is just the sheer amount of people that were there. And honestly, if it was a bull market, I think that we will probably get similar numbers of people, because, as I said, I think we've transcended the bull and bear markets, because Ethereum as an ecosystem is much more than the price of ETH, or much more than the price of assets. Yes, a lot of speculative activity drives a lot of the stuff that goes on in the Ethereum ecosystem. And yes, the more money there is, the more stuff gets funded, and teams get funded, and stuff gets built, and all that good stuff there. But I think that given that a lot of the conversations that I had at ETH Denver, I would say 95+% of them did not talk about the price even once. I think that Ethereum as a community, as an ecosystem, has transcended those bull and bear markets. And that to me is the most bullish thing that can happen. I've long wanted the Ethereum community to transcend these stupid little cycles that we have, these market cycles that we have, because we shouldn't be defined by these arbitrary market cycles where obviously we have a lot of new people come in during a bull market, then a lot of people go out during a bear market, and we're just stuck sitting here waiting until the next bull market comes around in order to get some adoption. I don't think that's the case for Ethereum anymore. And there's a bunch of other supporting evidence here. Obviously, a lot of the stuff in the Ethereum ecosystem is still growing really nicely. Layer 2s are growing amazingly. Gas fees are still quite high. We've been above the ultrasound barrier for a while now. And obviously, we're in deflationary ETH territory right now. That's the best way to measure on-chain activity. And I've said this for a while, because it's hard to fake, if not impossible to fake, because it's so expensive to fake. You would have to have a lot of money in order to fake that activity. But yeah, as I said, layer 2s are growing, DeFi stuff's still growing, the amount of developers building on top of Ethereum is still growing. So I don't look at it as it's a bear market, look how many people are here, or it's a bull market, look how many people are here. I look at it as Ethereum exists in bull or bear markets, doesn't matter what the market is doing, and it keeps growing no matter what, and it's growing at such a rapid pace right now. I think that it's basically reached escape velocity. I actually thought this a while ago, that the Ethereum community had reached escape velocity. But I think that now it truly has, and it's undeniable at this point. So that's my little theory there. I think it holds true. I think it will continue to hold true for years to come. I really do think Ethereum is in the best place it's ever been in right now, and continues to just get stronger and stronger and stronger for a bunch of reasons that I've outlined on the Refuel over the previous months, and obviously as I'll outline going forward. But that's the kind of like meta take for me from ETH Denver. Next take, there were a lot of sponsorship booths, and I guess that was what paid for ETH Denver, because it definitely cost a lot of money to throw this kind of event, and it was a huge venue, right? Just hiring at the venue alone would have cost a lot. But yeah, there were a lot of booths. There were a lot of booths from, I guess, like alternative L1s, and it did make the conference feel, I guess, corporate at times, where it lost that kind of, I guess, you could say cypherpunk kind of hacker vibe to it. There was that at kind of the side events, and also if you went to the hacker house itself and you were hacking along and building things, you would still get that. But as for the main venue, it definitely felt very corporatized. Well, maybe not very corporatized, but it's getting there. And I can imagine the next year's one will probably feel even more corporate. That's just a natural consequence of an ecosystem growing, I think. Obviously, there's a lot of money to be, or potential money to be made in crypto, in the Ethereum ecosystem, and that's going to attract a lot of different types of groups and people, but the booths paid for the conference. If it wasn't for the booths, if it wasn't for all the sponsors and all the sponsorships, it would have cost a lot to attend this conference, given just how expensive it is to throw something like this from every different kind of angle here. So that was my, other takeaway there is if you were at the conference, you'll know what I'm talking about. There were just booths absolutely everywhere. It was crazy. I mean, there had to be hundreds of booths, and there were booths of different varying sizes. What I found hilarious was that I believe the biggest booth was Hedera Hashgraph. So their booth was not just a little, not just a booth. It was a whole kind of display, and it was front and center. So I guess that was like prime real estate at the venue there. And they paid a lot to be there, which I just found hilarious because they're an alt L1. That I actually read yesterday that they kind of paused their chain because of some exploit. So obviously not decentralized, obviously just another L1 and a sea of L1s there. But hey, they paid for the conference, so kudos to them for that. But it wasn't just them. There was Polkadot, there was Nia, there was BNB Chain, there was a bunch of others out there. There were so many booths, right? And so many of these kind of competitors coming there because they know that's where the community is, that's where the developers are. But for me, it's funny because it just reinforces Ethereum as the hub, right? As the kind of center of this entire ecosystem. So I don't mind them being there. I've learned to love it at this point, right? Especially because they're paying to be there. They're not there for free. They're actually paying a lot of money. And I'm sure Hedera paid hundreds of thousands of dollars for that display that they had. So thank you for that. Thank you for, I guess, reinforcing Ethereum's network effects and the Ethereum community there. So that's the other thing there. Now, I guess my main takeaway from the conference itself, from after talking to so many different people, after meeting so many different people, after seeing what people are excited about, the main takeaway I have is that Ethereum still at its core has a really, really strong builder culture. There are so many people that, as I said, they don't care about the price of ETH. They don't care about the price of the tokens. What they want to do is build better systems. And I think that there's a few different examples about this. One of the most popular booths at ETH Denver was the Rocket Pool booth. Now, I walked past multiple times. It was actually rather difficult to find the Rocket Pool booth. Maybe that was just me, but it definitely wasn't front and center. You had to actually go out of your way to find it. And the navigation, I guess, was a bit all over the place because of the fact that it was such a big venue. But every single time I walked past the Rocket Pool booth, every single time I went there, it was packed, guys. It was absolutely packed. There were so many people there, so many people talking about Ethereum staking, so many people talking about the Atlas upgrade coming to make it easier for people to stake with just 8 ETH instead of 16 ETH for mini pools. They had a really cool display where you could basically get on a bike and power a little Proteus device. And I've talked about these Proteus devices before. They're made up of ROC 5B boards. You could power that and you could stake there. So you could watch it kind of attest to blocks and all that really cool stuff happening there. So that is a huge takeaway for me, because what that signals to me is that the people that at ETH Denver, a lot of people at ETH Denver were very interested in learning about the things that were actually adding value to the Ethereum ecosystem as a whole, and adding value to Ethereum's decentralization, to Ethereum's community, and all that stuff there. So that was definitely a huge thing for me. And there were also other staking booths there as well, like Stakewise was there, which is really great. And I talked to those guys; they're doing a lot of great work there. And there were so many other booths. I talked to so many people. I can't name all of them, but that was a huge takeaway for me. Just how busy this booth was, and just how, I guess, jam-packed with alpha a lot of the conversations I had with people were, and how excited people were. Like the energy was just absolutely insane, guys. Like I couldn't believe it myself. Like walking in there, And this is why I got so sick and so run down, because the energy of everyone was just off the charts. Like, no one was there that I talked to, that I met, who was just like, oh yeah, cool, whatever. It's a bear market. You know, when do you think ETH's going to go back up again? Oh, this is so depressing. No, there was none of that. Not one of that. There was just people doing and talking about cool things, being so energized by the community, so energized by the conference itself, and getting so much value and excitement out of it. So that was, I guess, probably my main takeaway from the whole thing there. Now, of course, I could talk about this forever, but I'm at 15 minutes here, and I didn't want to spend too long recapping here. But I had, honestly, the best time of my life at ETH Denver. It's probably up there with the most fun I've ever had in my entire life, honestly. And I know that's a big call to make, considering that there's a lot of other things that happen in life. But honestly, Ethereum and the Ethereum community is my life. This is basically, I guess, the majority of what I do in life and what I get enjoyment out of. And just being amongst the community, being amongst everything happening and talking to so many people, I just had the time of my life. Even though I got sick, I actually got really sick on the Saturday. I got a fever. I was at the venue and I was talking to people and I was just shaking. I'm like, oh, this is bad. But like, I love talking to people. I love being there so bad that I just wanted to stay there, even though I was so sick and just needed to get back to the hotel room. And I made it to like 4:30 p.m. I went to the Ethereum attestation service happy hour, and I was talking to them there, and I'm like, look guys, I'm so sorry, I'd love to stick around, I'm having so much fun, but I really need to get back to the hotel room. And I trekked back to the hotel room. It took me about an hour to get back, and I just slept for a long time. And I stayed in my hotel on Sunday. And then on Monday, I kind of flew back. I didn't actually know I had COVID until I got back, because getting a COVID test was basically impossible. In Denver, I couldn't find anywhere for some reason. But yeah, I honestly was just having so much fun that I kind of got annoyed that I got sick, but not surprised at all. And it wasn't just me. Obviously, a lot of people got sick. But yeah, I just had a really, really bad fever, and it was not fun. That's for sure. But anyway, going to leave that one at that. I have so much more to get through. As I said, this is probably going to go over the 2 hours that I budgeted for originally. But let's get into the news of the last 2 weeks, starting from Monday. I guess I can't remember the exact date on Monday. I think it was maybe the 27th. Yeah, it was the 27th of Feb till today. Let's get into it. So, first up, we have a thread from Jordy Baylina here talking about how the scalability of a ZK rollup is not limited by the prover. Now, this thread's a great read. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you guys to read it. But this actually was spurred on by a few days prior. Anatoly from the Solana ecosystem, of course, was fudding L2, specifically ZK L2s, and he really didn't have any idea what he was talking about. And the grand irony of this as well was that while Anatoly was saying this, Solana went offline again, or it had like, I guess, 95+% degradation in performance or something. I don't know. I wasn't following it too closely. So I thought that was hilarious at the time. But Jordy Baylina, as you guys know, works at Polygon on the ZKVM team. He's been the lead of Polygon Hermes for quite a while. He is basically one of the forerunners of ZKVMs and ZK Tech in general. So when he puts a tweet thread out, you listen, you read it. So as I said, I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to read it. But I would say that don't actually listen to any of these kind of people like Anatoly talking about ZK L2s, because for them, so it's all a game of, I guess, kind of incentives here. So Anatoly does not have an incentive to make ZKs look good, because ZK L2s obsolete Solana. So for him, it's like, oh crap, where can I poke holes in this thing? Like, even if he knows what he's saying isn't exactly totally accurate, for him, it's like an existential thing. Solana is in a really bad place right now, as you guys know, and I don't think it's going to be able to get themselves out of it. And ZK stuff and L2s in general are in a really, really great place. So obviously, he doesn't have a motivation to talk about ZK L2s as if there's something revolutionary or if there's something positive, whereas obviously, Jordy does, because he's working on them. But it wasn't just him that was talking about this sorts of stuff. A lot of the other ZKVM and ZK researchers basically said, Anatoly doesn't know what he's talking about. And yeah, so I'd listen to these people rather than people from competing ecosystems, that's for sure. But anyway, wanted to just highlight that. You can go give this a read. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. Moving on. Now, I did say that a lot of this news is going to be out of order. It's not going to be categorized, so I'm going to be jumping between different categories here, but I guess that keeps it fresh. But anyway, we have an all-new Frame v 0.6 is out. So if you're a Frame user as your kind of main main desktop wallet user here, well, this update is for you. You can download it today at frame.sh. So this has all the functionality you know and love from Frame Canary. It's now available to everyone in this version. It includes omni-chain routing, which removes the concept of being on-chain, which is something, I guess, pretty cool. And you can read about it on the blog here as well if you want to. So I'm not sure how many of you guys use Frame as your day-to-day wallet, but yeah, if you do, this is an update for you. So go check that out there. All right, so this is old news now, I guess, but this is something that I think that I want to talk about because there was some kind of like headbutting going on in the Daily Gwei Discord channel when I spoke about this. So this, as I said, this happened a couple of weeks ago now, but basically there was a reverse exploit that happened on the Oasis platform where essentially the Wormhole team. So I should give some extra context here. So the Wormhole bridge was hacked quite a while ago for a massive amount of money. I think it was $250 million or $300 million quite a while ago. And then recently, why this has come up again was that there was a court order issued to the team behind the Oasis app, which is an app that sits on top of MakerDAO. They have their own smart contracts that allow you to take out CDPs. Well, there was a court order issued to them that basically said to them they needed to use an exploit in order to get the funds back from the Wormhole hacker who had used Oasis to, I believe, open a CDP or something like that. Or do something with it. I can't remember exactly what they did with it, but essentially this exploit was used, the funds were taken, and everyone was just like, holy crap, like MakerDAO isn't decentralized. Like, what is this? So you're just basically stealing the funds here. And I basically clarified this on Discord and on Twitter. I basically said, well, technically, and this is where I guess people butt heads with me. Technically, Maker is still decentralized. It was Oasis that was built on top of Maker that had this centralization vector in it, or had this exploit vector in it, that was used by the Oasis team in order to, I guess, get this money back from the Wormhole exploit. Now, this is no longer possible. I should clarify that they actually kind of patched this and fixed this, so this can't be done again. But obviously, it kind of opens up a lot of questions about what is actually decentralized in this ecosystem and what is centralized. So I should kind of state that while I believe that being technically correct and technically accurate is always very, very important and what I always argue for, I do think that the Oasis team is obviously very close to Maker. Whenever you go to open a CDP, Maker actually directs you to Oasis to open one and to use their smart contracts to do this. So while they were technically separate, they could be argued to be functionally the same thing. Now, I personally don't believe that they should be argued to be functionally the same thing, but there is an argument to be made there. So in saying that, I believe that while I guess like the smart contracts were separate, MakerDAO's decentralization wasn't compromised here. It was the Oasis contracts themselves. I think a lot of users weren't actually aware of the fact that they were separate, and they just assumed that Oasis was Maker. You know, they assumed they were the same thing. And honestly, they can't be blamed for that, considering how close the relationship is. I mean, Oasis actually spun out of Maker. The team members on Oasis, a lot of them worked at Maker. A lot of Maker people kind of invested in Oasis as well. So it's not like they were totally separate entities with a firewall, a massive kind of like wall between them. There was a lot of commingling here. But I think from being a kind of technically accurate perspective, I think people need to understand that the Maker contracts themselves weren't exploited. They're still decentralized. It was the Oasis smart contracts built on top of it that were kind of exploited here. That the exploit isn't possible anymore. They fixed it, but that's what happened. So yeah, where you fall on the how close these things are is a different debate. But I think just being technically accurate here, that's exactly what happened. So as I said, I know this is old news, but I still think it's important to kind of cover it and for you guys to understand exactly what happened here. All right, so next up we have a new newsletter from Amagan.eth here, who works in comms at Gnosis. So basically this is called the Rhino Review, which is an Ethereum staking journal that you can subscribe to on Substack. And there are 2 editions so far, I believe. They basically cover everything happening in the Ethereum staking ecosystem. Now, this is quickly become one of my favorite newsletters in the ecosystem right now, simply because there's so much happening in Ethereum staking, and it's obviously very hard for me to to keep track of it and to keep track of exactly what's going on. Well, this Rhino review is a perfect tool for doing that. So just wanted to give a shout out here. If you want to subscribe, you can. It is a bi-weekly Ethereum staking newsletter, so you'll be getting it every 2 weeks, I believe. So you can subscribe to it. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. But yeah, there's just so much happening in Ethereum staking land, guys. I mean, we have Shanghai coming very, very soon. I mean, what? Probably like a month or so out now, and it's going to just explode. I mean, I spoke to, this is something I should have said before when I was talking about ETH Denver. So I spoke to a lot of people about Ethereum staking, and I can confirm that there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions of ETH sitting on the sidelines waiting for Shanghai to go live for them to stake. So if you think that there's going to be a net outflow of stake once Shanghai goes live, I think that you should reevaluate that thesis. If you think that the ETH price is going to crash after it, I think you should reevaluate that thesis. There is going to be so much new ETH staked. There is going to be such a de-risking of Ethereum staking. There's going to be such a change in narrative and such a, I guess, like disruption of that narrative of, oh, everything's going to dump, post Shanghai, because it's just not the case. And I've talked about this plenty of times on the review before, but that's a bit of alpha for you guys. I got alpha that there is a lot of ETH sitting on the sidelines that is going to be staked post Shanghai, simply because obviously it's de-risked. Withdrawals are there. You can kind of sell your rewards if you want to, earn passive income off of that. So yeah, watch out for that. Watch this space for that. That's for sure. All right, so some Connext network growth statistics here from Arjun, who said, since going live on February 2nd, Connext network has grown close to 9 times on every core metric. TVL is up from $2 million to $18 million, weekly volume from 500,000 to 5.5 million, weekly transactions from 650 to almost 5,000, and they're only just getting started. So this was the metrics from February 2nd to February 28th, and this is only natural that they're growing here, I think, because layer 2s are growing. And obviously, people want to move between layer 2s. It's becoming a bit of a kind of thing that I've had to do every time I'm using an L2 these days, which is totally fine now that there's bridging. I basically would just bridge from L2 to L2. I'll use various bridging protocols to do this and various bridging protocol aggregators to do this. But no surprise that Connext is growing here, given how fast the L2s are growing, how many people are using them, and how much growth, I guess, the liquidity on these bridges is having as well. So you can bridge more. A lot of the whales can bridge as well. So there's no kind of issue with liquidity there. So congrats to Connext on the growth. I'd love to see some fresh stats at the end of the March month here. All right, next up here, we have the Ethereum attestation service, which is now live across multiple EVMs. So they are live on Arbitrum and Optimism and other EVMs, which I guess, like they said, would follow soon after, but this was a couple of weeks ago. So they are live on a bunch of these other chains, and they're also live on Ethereum mainnet. Now, I did mention Ethereum attestation service before. I met the founders and some of the team, and I also kind of talked to them at their happy hour there. This is one project that I'm happy to put so much of my weight behind, because they're a public good, and I've spoken about that before, how they're trying to be a public good. They're not trying to essentially kind of monetize the actual protocol itself. I don't think they're going to have a token or anything like that. So they're trying to be a public good. And you guys know I'm a public goods maximalist, and I love all this sorts of stuff. But exactly what they are, if you don't know, it's basically a way to kind of attest to different things. Now, you may have seen that Optimism had their own version of this, and you may have seen a bunch of other things around the centralized identity and voting and all that good stuff there. But what Ethereum attestation service is trying to be a standard for attesting on EVM chains. And we don't have something like this yet. As I said, Optimism was trying to work on it, but I believe they're actually going to be using EAS now instead of their own solution, which is good, because we want a standard for this stuff, especially if it's a public good. I'm all for there being kind of a monopoly in a standard if it's a public good. Now, for example, the ERC20 standard I would consider a public good, because there's no ERC20 token, right? There's no governance token, I guess, tied to the ERC20 standard, right? It's just a standard. It's just a public good that anyone can use, and it's a monopoly, basically. There are other token standards, and I'm not talking about NFT token standard. I'm talking about just normal token standards, but they aren't used because they're not needed, right? There is no one profiting off of the ERC20 token standard unless they make their own token, right, using that standard. So the terminology may be a little bit confusing here, but I'm fine with there being monopolies within standards, as long as they're public goods. As long as there's not one party kind of unilaterally profiting from it And that's why I think the EAS should be the standard for attestation, because it's a public good, because it's been built from the ground up. It's actually a really, really cool service. You can go to easscan.org to actually see what's happening here and see how it's all working. And they've put a lot of love into this thing, and they know exactly what they're doing here. And they're going to be working with, as I said, like Optimism and a bunch of other teams that have been trying to do this. So yeah, very, very cool to see them live across various EVM chains here. And this is one project that I think is worth paying attention to. All right, so Scroll announced that, they said here on a tweet, for nearly 2 years, we've built our ZKVM in the open alongside the Privacy and Scaling Explorations group at the Ethereum Foundation and other contributors. And today we're taking the next step to Gurley, the final stage before mainnet. So they're basically live on the Gurley testnet here, and it's 100% permissionless for people to develop on. So a lot of movement happening in the ZKVM space, as you guys know. All of them are going live. Polygon ZKVM going live this month on the 27th of March. I would say that Scroll ZKVM not far behind. ZK Sync's ZKVM is very, very close now. I believe maybe 3 weeks out or something like that. Consensus's ZKVM is going live soon. Tyco as well. I'm going to talk about their roadmap a bit later in the episode. I've got that loaded up for you guys. So yeah, it really is an arms race now on the ZKVM front here. And honestly, like I forgot to mention this before, I went to ZK Day, which was a side event. It was the first event that I went to on the Tuesday when I at ETH Denver. There were so many people there, guys. The ZK stuff has become this massive hype kind of narrative that I don't know. I kind of get a little bit bearish when I see that on a lot of the newer projects, because if you look at the newer projects, a lot of them are, I guess, like opportunistic. So I'm sticking to the older projects here that have been around for a while, and Scroll is definitely one of them, but there's not just Scroll, there's obviously Polygon and all the ZK stuff that they're doing. ZK Sync, Tyco as well, been around for a while. Loopring veterans working on that as well. So yeah, but anyway, Scroll's Gurley testnet is now live. If you're a developer or a user, you want to go test it out, you can. I'll link this in the YouTube description below for you to check out. All right, so there was some new research around Ethereum's core consensus protocol a couple of weeks ago. So this came from Luca Zanoli, who is a consensus researcher, Zanolini, who is a consensus researcher at the Ethereum Foundation. So he starts off the thread by saying, the implemented consensus protocol of Ethereum, Gaspar, has a hybrid design. It combines a protocol that allows dynamic participation among validators called LMD Ghost and a finality gadget called Caspar. So the reason why we want to improve this, or at least the main bulk of this work here, is so that we can have single slot finality. Now, I've talked about this before about how the Ethereum protocol right now has a finality of 2 epochs, which is around 13 minutes. If we were able to change this and have single slot finality, it means we would have finality in 12 seconds. That is an absolutely insane improvement, right? It brings a lot of benefits with it, and it's something that a lot of people are working towards right now. It's obviously something that is going to take a little while to come to main, that it requires a lot of testing. It is definitely, you know, anytime you're kind of changing the core consensus mechanism of a chain, it requires a lot of testing, a lot of research, a lot of battle testing to make sure that nothing breaks under certain conditions. But this is the latest research out of here. So this isn't just Luca publishing this. There are a few other people working on this as well. But there are obviously 2 authors of this paper called A Simple Single Slot Finality Protocol for Ethereum. So you should definitely check this out. It is definitely quite technical. It's getting into the weeds, and there's a lot of kind of stuff here that you may not know what it looks like. But yeah, the gist of it is that single slot finality, which would be a massive improvement over what we currently have within Ethereum. All right, so a new project called NodeSets has been announced, and they've revealed their technical details of what they're calling, temporarily calling Project Hyperdrive. So basically, what this is, they're calling it an L2 for Rocket Pool designed to massively boost the most decentralized liquid staking protocol. So it's basically interface that sits on top of Rocket Pool in order to make it so that more Rocket Pool mini pools can be spun up, and obviously increase the the adoption of Rocket Pool here. So you can see the nice little graphic here of how this actually works, how there's a bunch of, how Project Hyperdrive sits amongst the Rocket Pool community or Rocket Pool ecosystem here, and how this will work. So it is fully detailed in the blog post here. I'm not going to go through it now, but you should definitely check this out. I'm all for getting as many people as many projects as possible, building on top of other core protocols, and kind of funneling in users to them and making sure that the adoption of these protocols happens, especially post Shanghai, because as you guys may have seen, Lido is back above 30%, I believe, of total kind of staked ETH. That's due to a large deposit of 300,000 ETH from Justin Sun. So I don't know how sticky that deposit is, but yeah, making it more attractive to stake with alternative solutions is definitely the main focus, I think, of the Ethereum staking community especially post Shanghai. And I've talked about that great reshuffling before, and as I've said in the past, it's not something that's going to happen by itself. We need to kind of will it into existence, and projects like NodeSet are definitely what NodeSet / Project Hyperdrive are definitely the things that we need to get us there. So yeah, you can go check this out. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. All right, so the ETH Ecosystem Support Program has a new grants round live, which is for account abstraction. So this is something that I actually should have talked about when I was talking about ETH Denver, but account abstraction has become this big thing that finally has a lot of people, or I guess like a lot of teams working on it together and trying to create a standard for account abstraction together. And it's great to see that the Ethereum Foundation Support Program here is opening up a grants round for this. So this round has started on February 27th and will be running until March 31st here. So if this is something you're interested in, you can definitely go check this out. But as I said, it finally feels like we're getting a lot of activity around account abstraction. It finally feels like a lot of the wallets are coming together to agree on a standard here and to build towards account abstraction. There has been two main blockers to getting mass adoption of account abstraction wallets instead of just normal wallets. One of them was cost. It obviously costs a lot more to spin up these wallets because they're smart contract wallets essentially. And obviously on layer 1, that is prohibitively expensive. So that's why we're going to be building them out on layer 2. And building up these wallets on layer 2. And 2, there wasn't really a standard that everyone agreed upon until recently. There was a wallet con at ETH Denver on, I believe, the Wednesday, where a lot of teams got together, a lot of people got together, and are really excited about the future of wallets and making it so that we can actually have account abstraction wallets instead of relying on the wallets that we use today, which are very, very basic. Honestly, account abstraction wallets really do open up and really are a 0 to 1 innovation for kind of wallet innovation. So for example, with account abstraction wallets, you can have things like true 2FA, you can have social recovery, which falls into that. You can have spending limits, you can have whitelisted addresses, all built into your wallet. So no need to rely on third-party services, all built into your wallet, which is obviously extremely exciting, extremely bullish. And as I said, I think account abstraction is finally having its time in the sun in 2023 here, but you can go check out the grants round for yourself if that's something that you're interested in. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. All right, so Shapella, or the, I guess, Shanghai / Capella update went live on Sepolia on Feb 28th, and it was successfully activated here. And there was also an announcement that Girly is happening, I believe, on the 15th of March, and then the mainnet will obviously follow shortly after that. So we're just running through the motions now, guys, with this update or upgrade, I guess I should say, for withdrawals on mainnet, which should happen, I guess, within the month here. So not much more to talk about there. Just that Sepolia went live without a hitch, I believe. Girly going live soon, and then mainnet. All right, so there's some new research out of Labris here. So they're calling this the comprehensive guide to scaling Ethereum and rollups. This is the ultimate resource to understand why L2s are needed and how they work. So this is quite a lengthy research article, but if you're interested in layer 2s, rollups, how they work, how they're going to be the next big thing or are the next big thing for Ethereum, and why, this is definitely a research post that you should go check out. This is great kind of reading here. It's not too long, but it's definitely going to give you a great overview of how this all works. So big shout out to Labris for putting this together. And you can go check this out. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. All right, so new, I guess, product out of the DeFi Llama ecosystem here. So they've released something called Llama Zip, which is a Uniswap V3 router specifically optimized for optimism, achieving huge gas reductions versus every other aggregator. In the screenshot, 7 0.8 times cheaper than 1 inch. So to use it, just swap on Optimism at swap.defillama.com. And this is a thread on how they achieved it here. This is really cool. This is what I've talked about before about how there can be a lot of optimizations had at layer 2 that you couldn't necessarily get at layer 1 in order to bring gas fees down on layer 2 a lot, I guess, like more than you could on layer 1 here. So kudos to the Llama team for getting this out there. As I said, like it's at swap.defillama.com to use Llama Zip. So this should be the aggregator that you're using on layer 2s in order to, well, I guess like on Optimism for now, in order to save the most that you can on gas fees, because obviously the gas fees, even though they're much cheaper at layer 2, they can still add up depending on how many swaps you do. And obviously post EIP 4844, this is just going to get even more cheaper as these things inherit those gas savings that we'll be giving to the layer 2. So I'll link this in the YouTube description. You can go check it out for yourself. All right, so we have some news about Devcon 7. So the biggest news, I think, is that it's being moved to 2024. There is not going to be a Devcon in 2023, and that is going to be hosted in Southeast Asia. Now, reading the blog post and reading between the lines, they really want to have it in a place that brings the most impact to the most amount of people, which means that I doubt that it's going to be in Singapore, since Singapore is very expensive. It's not going to bring the most impact to the most amount of people. So that only, I think, leaves a few different countries or a few different places in Southeast Asia. I think the front runners would be Vietnam and Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia there. Those would be my bets, honestly. I know there already is an ETH Vietnam, so maybe Vietnam is more of a chance than Malaysia. But I'm super excited about this because Southeast Asia is much closer to me than most other places in the world, so I definitely would love to get out there. I didn't go to Devcon in Bogota last year, in part due to the travel distance. Honestly, it would have taken me over 30 hours to get there, and also the altitude. That's another reason why I got sick in Denver. I didn't have a good night's sleep in Denver at all. The high altitude living just wrecked me. In Melbourne, the altitude is basically zero. So I've lived in Melbourne my entire life. I'm used to zero altitude. Then I went to Denver and it just kind of all hit me at once. And Bogota, I believe, is almost 2 times the altitude of Denver. So yeah, that would probably wreck me. But yeah, I'm excited for Southeast Asia here for Devcon 7. There is no confirmed location yet, of course, but yeah, it's happening in 2024. And they also teased in the blog post that there's going to be another Dev Connect by the end of this year. I believe it'll probably happen in October or November. Not sure on the location at all, but reading between the, I guess, lines, I saw some update about the ETH Global events happening happening this year, and there's one happening in November in Istanbul. So I guess if there's an ETH Global event in Istanbul in November, maybe Dev Connect will be hosted there if they want to. I mean, Dev Connect, there's only been one that's been hosted in Amsterdam. Some people said that they might host it, might keep the European kind of theme. So I don't know. But yeah, I don't really have any good insight there. But definitely for Devcon 7, I would say that it's going to be Vietnam or Malaysia. Definitely not Singapore. But I don't know if I'll make it out to Dev Connect. It just depends where it is, of course. But definitely going to try and make it out to Devcon in Southeast Asia here. You can read the blog post for full details on this. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. All right, so Coinbase announced that they have a new kind of initiative called Crypto 435, which is their campaign to grow the crypto advocacy community and share tools and resources to make your voice heard. So I guess if you're in the US, you can become an advocate for this by going to the blog post and signing up here, so you can put in your details and kind of join this initiative. I think this is a great initiative. I think that crypto needs to be more visible in the political arena. We need to make sure that the politicians and the policymakers understand our side of the story, so to speak, and our arguments, rather than living in a vacuum, because we see what's been happening with all the regulatory stuff. The SEC is just basically gone rogue. There's a bunch of other kind of regulatory bodies that are just doing stuff that is not healthy to crypto. So I'm glad that Coinbase, obviously the biggest exchange in the US, is leading this initiative here. So if this is something that you're interested in, you can become an advocate. I'll link this in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, so Rocket Rescue node is now available for Rocket Pool node operators on mainnet. So I've talked about what the Rocket Pool Rescue node is before, about how you can basically use this as a backup node in case your nodes go offline here. You can request access, but yeah, this is finally live on mainnet. So if you're a Rocket Pool mini pool operator, this will probably be something that's interesting to you. It's at rescuenode.com, and I'll link this in the YouTube description below as well for you to check out. But yeah, this is really cool. I think this is great. I think this is a great little tool for mini pool operators and definitely something that you should check out. All right, so announcement out of the Immutable ecosystem. So they announced the Immutable Unity SDK, which is going to enable game developers to build Web3 games directly in the Unity engine, which is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, game creation engines in the, I guess, a gaming ecosystem here. And as Robbie Ferguson says here, this is an enormous step for Immutable, but also for the entire industry. More than 50% of all games are built with Unity. So yeah, Unity is the biggest, I guess, right now. Biggest game engine in the gaming ecosystem here. So great to see Immutable, the Immutable Unity SDK being spun up. It means that game developers will be able to integrate Immutable into their games here and build really cool experiences. And this is another thing that was actually very prevalent at ETH Denver that I hadn't seen at any other ETH conference. There was a huge gaming section, a lot of crypto blockchain games there, a lot of arcade games to just get amongst it. But yeah, that was something that I hadn't seen at previous ETH conferences that I believe is going to be a thing going forward, because crypto gaming, NFTs, obviously is a huge thing within the ecosystem, and I think it's only going to get bigger over time. So it was pretty cool to see that, and pretty cool to see that Immutable obviously is at the forefront here with this Unity SDK. All right, last up, we have an announcement from Slingshot that the Slingshot wallet has officially launched. You can download the mobile wallet app today and say goodbye to C5 forever. It is now available publicly on both iOS and Android, and you can just type in Slingshot wallet on the various app stores there for you to go download that, which is very, very cool to see. So yeah, go do that. If you haven't yet, go check that out, and I'll link this in the YouTube description below for you to do so as well. All right, next up we have a new product called Jumper, which is a crypto's everything exchange, or at least that's what they're calling it. So this is built on top of the Li-Fi protocol, or the Li-Fi protocol, which is a aggregator for bridges. So it's basically an interface on top of that. And yeah, this is really cool. Honestly, I used this yesterday, I believe. To go from Arbitrum mainnet to Ethereum mainnet, and it worked really well. So you can swap any token on it. It currently is supported by, or maintains, over 15 plus bridges, routes through over 30 decentralized exchanges, and supports over 20 chains. So yeah, I definitely recommend going and checking this out for yourself and using it if this is something that you will get use out of. And I remember I mentioned before how, because the L2s are growing so much and because there's so many L2s now, and there's so much activity happening on all of them, bridging between them is definitely becoming more popular, and it's definitely something that I can see a lot of people using. So I'm glad that we have something like Jumper, where it doesn't just rely on that one bridge. It actually just aggregates all the bridges so that you can get the best kind of price, the best liquidity, and be able to bridge between whatever chain you want to bridge through. Now, it's not just L2 chains. I believe this also supports different L1s. It's probably all EVM at this point, because most of the L2s and L1s and side chains are EVM compatible, but yeah, I thought this was really cool that this went live, and it's built on top of Li-Fi, which is the protocol powering Jumper here. All right, so speaking of decentralized exchange infrastructure, ZeroEx has announced something called the ZeroEx Transaction Relay API, which is powering crypto trades on Robinhood's wallet app. So Robinhood users can now trade crypto with no network fees on the Polygon POS chain, and you can learn more and join the waitlist for early access to the Transaction Relay API on ZeroX's blog here. This is pretty cool. I mean, Robinhood is obviously the normie trading platform for not just crypto, but for stocks as well, and as a few other products on there. So it's great to see that ZeroEx is integrating with them and allowing people to trade assets on the Polygon POS chain, so be able to trade on chain in a scalable way. And these people may not have used anything on chain before, because, as I said, they're Robinhood users, which cater to more, I guess, the noobs rather than the advanced users here. But great to see ZeroEx has put this kind of API out there and is powering this here under the hood, and also great to see Polygon getting more adoption here. So definitely go check this out if you haven't yet. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. All right, so I should have mentioned this before when I was talking about the Immutable Unity SDK, but MetaMask has actually launched their own SDK in the Unity Asset Store, which will allow devs to connect their games to the MetaMask wallet, enabling users to interact with Web3-enabled features within the game itself. And they said here, get ready for a whole new level of gameplay. This is really cool because, as I said before, there was a big gaming presence at ETH Denver. Gaming is going to be a huge thing, I think, within the crypto space. There were actually a bunch of cool games that I saw at ETH Denver. Not sure exactly how crypto and blockchain fits into them, but the games themselves are definitely getting better. The games themselves definitely looking a lot more fun, looking a lot more polished, and especially if they're going to be built in the Unity engine, they're going to look like AAA level games. They're going to look like professional games. Now, as I said, depending on how crypto is integrated with them, will I guess is another discussion for another time, but the games themselves are looking better, which I'm very positive on. And the fact that the games themselves can actually integrate with Immutable and integrate with MetaMask is very positive because it allows them to build these crypto things natively into their games. And maybe we're going to get a better outcome than what we've had in the past, which is basically crypto being attached to these games and turning these games into Ponzi's, essentially. I want to see more than that. I want to see true ownership of assets. I want to see in-game economies built around these assets that don't look like Ponzi's, that are actually built to, to basically benefit the game rather than take away from the game itself. But we'll have to see how that shakes out there. As I said, a discussion for a different time, but cool to see more of these things being supported, more of these things being supported in the Unity store. All right, so Mega Labs has an announcement where they said, after a few months of intense work, we are pleased to present our latest project to support the Ethereum ecosystem, ETHSIA, a live visualization tool with the latest on-chain statistics. So you can check this out at ETHSIA.com. So basically what this does is it gives you a nice overview of what's happening on the Ethereum network here. So you can see that the different epochs and the different kind of slots in them, and you can kind of see a visualization of what's happening on the network itself. So basically, this is the each epoch being calculated right now, the two most previous ones. Then you can see here the old ones. So the target, so missing target, attestations, the source, the head, and the total active validators for that epoch there, which is very, very cool. So it's just another way to visualize these things, and you can kind of hover over the different things, and it gives you an explanation of what's happening. You can click into the different slots to see what's happening in them. See all the data and all the, what should I say, the details around it, of course. And you can link to Beacon Chain here to see the proposed index, all that good stuff there. So just another site to keep track of everything that's happening on the Ethereum network protocol layer here. I'll link this in the YouTube description for you to check out for yourselves. All right, so the Protocol Guild has completed their latest quarterly update with 3 of 4 planned for the pilot. So 7 new members with 7 departing equals 128 members still. Protocol Guild actively self-curates its beneficiary set to ensure its high signal reflection of the reality on the ground. So the membership is basically here. So what they do is they review the membership every quarter to make sure that they're paying out to the right people and organizations, and they aren't paying out to people who are no longer doing work on the core protocol themselves. So you can see here that this list was updated on the 27th of Feb, and you can see all the members and who they're associated with. So obviously, there are members from the Ethereum Foundation. There's members from the different teams at the Ethereum Foundation, from Lighthouse, Lodestone, all the core clients, all the different researchers, and all their addresses and how they're weighted here as well. So you can read about the weighting and how this is worked out on this page as well. But great to see that the different members are still kind of being compensated here, and members are being rotated out when they're no longer in need of the compensation for the work that they're doing. Because at the end of the day, the worst that could happen is if the Protocol Guild got stale and they had members on that were no longer doing work but still getting paid. That wouldn't really make much sense. It would make the whole thing less fair for everyone. It would lead to people being kind of maybe, I guess, upset about it and lead to some unintended negative consequences from that. So great to see that they've updated the member list here. It remains the same at 128, but there were 7 new members and 7 existing that were taken off here. So yeah, you can check this out for yourself. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, so a announcement out of the Polygon ecosystem. So David Schwartz here announced the release of the open source Polygon ID identity infrastructure. So this is the first decentralized identity platform using zero knowledge to issue credentials on chain, making it secure and privacy preserving to power identity in Web3. This is another big kind of business unit for Polygon, the Polygon ID effort here. They're basically bringing in all their ZK efforts and all their ZK products into this and making sure that we can build, or they can build, a proper decentralized identity solution that can play nicely across not just their own ZKVM, but other kind of EVM or ZKVM chains out there. And I've talked a lot about decentralized identity in the past, and especially over the last few months on the Refuel. It's definitely becoming more and more of a thing because, I mean, as the ecosystem grows, we need a way to identify people, and we need a way to identify them and that they're real people in a privacy preserving way. And one way of doing that is with attestations. I spoke about the Ethereum attestation service before. Another way is doing it with ZK technology, Polygon ID, Sysmo. I've talked about before how you can get those ZK badges that basically prove that you own something without revealing the address that you own it on. And yeah, I mean, there are so many cool things happening in the ZK privacy space. Obviously, ZK gets talked about a lot for the scalability that it brings, but the privacy space is making waves. Aztec Protocol, Polygon ID, Sysmo, there's a lot more kind of stuff being worked on and a lot more stuff to come. But yeah, really cool to see this out of the Polygon ecosystem. You can check out David Schwartz's thread on this with links to different various resources, which I'll link in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, so POAP has introduced POAP Checkout, which is a new tool for communities to create culture and support causes they care about by minting POAPs. POAP Checkout gives creators tools to engage their audience through moments and shape culture. So this is another, I guess, kind of tool for people to use in order to use POAP or integrate POAP with their different events and different things that they do. So it's basically an infrastructure thing for them. And you can read the full details about this in the YouTube description below. But I thought this is really cool. I love using POAP. Honestly, I got a lot of POAPs when I was in ETH Denver. I had my own POAP for the Daily Gwei meetup, which I put onto one of those. You may have seen them before. They're called the IYK little devices. They're circular and you tap them and they've got NFC in them and then you can get the POAP. It was actually a really seamless and smooth experience loading my POAP onto that once I had it designed. So the POAP was actually designed by the Popathon community, which was great. I actually loved the designs that people submitted and I picked one of them and it came out really, really cool. And then I basically loaded it up on that little device and people could tap it at the event and get the POAP. So yeah, more of these tools that make it easier for people to use POAP themselves and integrate it with their existing kind of events or existing stuff that they're building is a welcome thing for sure. And that's exactly what POAP Checkout is doing here. So if you're interested in learning more about that, you can check it out. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. All right, so this got a lot of, I guess, attention when it was announced at ETH Denver. So ERC 4337 has been deployed on mainnet. So this is basically a token standard, or maybe I shouldn't say token standard, a standard that has been deployed on mainnet that had a security audit done by OpenZeppelin, bundlers and paymasters by a lot of these different entities here, and 300,000 in grants by the Ethereum Foundation. So as I said, when I was talking about the ETH Denver recap, account abstraction and things like ERC 4337 are getting a lot of attention right now. They're getting a lot of different teams putting their weight behind them. It's a standard that people want to use to build smart contract or account abstraction wallets here. So it's great to see this live on mainnet. And there was a bit of misreporting about this where people said that it was activated on the Ethereum network and they were framing it as if it was an EIP that went live in some sort of hard fork. That isn't the case at all. This is an ERC, which is something that anyone can deploy onto mainnet. It is a standard. It is a set of smart contracts. It does not require a hard fork. It is not an EIP. They are two different things, but still very cool to see this live on mainnet here. So if you haven't checked this out for yourself, I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, so Stakewise has announced the launch of Atlantic, which is a closed testnet for Stakewise V3. The goal of the Atlantic testnet is to stretch the core Stakewise V3 architecture to its capacity and identify the most serious issues and bugs before public testing. So you guys will know that I've talked about Stakewise V3 a lot recently. It is a major upgrade to the Stakewise protocol. It is going to enable a lot of people to do a lot of really cool things with staking. So for example, I'll be able to set up a Stakewise V3 vault under the Daily Gwei brand, where people could basically stake with me. I'll run the nodes and the validators on my own hardware here, but you could send your ETH to the vault that I have and do it in a non-custodial way. You get an LSD token out of it, but instead of you won't have to run the pools yourself. Or sorry, I should say the nodes and the validators yourself. You're basically outsourcing that task to me. I never have any custody or claim on your funds, but I run the infrastructure in order for you to get exposure to staked ETH in a non-custodial, decentralized way, which is something that I'm really, really excited about. I'm honestly going to do this once I once this goes live and once I'm comfortable with it. I'm going to set up my own Daily Gwei pool that you guys can contribute to. And what I'm going to do as well is, instead of taking rewards for myself, like an operator reward, whether that be like 10, 15% or whatever it is, I'm going to take that and donate it to the protocol guild. You guys know I love doing stuff like that, but that's what I'm going to do. So you could stake with the Daily Gwei Stakewise V3 vault, and any rewards that I get from that, or any kind of like fee that I take from that, will be going towards the protocol guild. So it'll be donated to the protocol guild there. So you'll be able to support public goods while staking with me, and while staking with other people. Obviously, it pulls it all together, and I'll run the nodes and validators for you. I have a lot of experience doing this. I have all the necessary infrastructure. I have the backup power supplies. I have the backup internet connections. And I obviously have a lot of experience because of my solo staking that I'm doing. And I'm obviously an ODAO member now with my Rocket Pool node, Rocket Pool mini pools as well. So you could trust that I know what I'm doing when I'm running these sorts of stuff. But there's no obligation there. I'll have more details about that when the time comes. But this is just the closed testnet that's live right now for Stakewise V3, which is codenamed Atlantic. And you can learn more about it. I'll link in the YouTube description below. But as I said, it is a closed testnet. It is not open to everyone. I'm sure they'll do an open one later on when the time comes. All right, so as I mentioned before, the Girly testnet is getting upgraded to Shapala. This is actually happening on the 14th of March at 10 p.m. UTC. I mentioned the 15th before, so this is happening very, very soon at epoch 162,304. So as I said before, we're just running through the motions now, guys, with this sort of stuff. This will happen on the Girly testnet, and then mainnet will happen early to mid-April, I believe. I remember I did say it would happen probably most likely in late March, but I think given that a lot of people were at ETH Denver, and given that we want to be sure that obviously this goes through all well and good, it's going to be happening early to mid-April here on mainnet. So yeah, just running through the motions, happening quite soon here. All right, so I think one of the biggest announcements out of ETH Denver was that Uniswap has introduced their own wallet here. So they're calling this a completely self-custodial, open-sourced mobile app from the most trusted name in DeFi, now available as a limited early release through Apple TestFlight. I actually got access to this because there was a QR code that you could scan at the Uniswap booth at ETH Denver. It is pretty slick. It reminds me a lot of Rainbow Wallet, honestly. It's not a smart contract wallet. It's not like Argent or anything like that. It's just a basic wallet so far. And a lot of people are asking the question, why is Uniswap doing a wallet? And this was the first question I had as well. I'm like, we have so many wallets right now. Why is Uniswap making their own wallet? Well, from what I could gather, and for people that I've spoken to, the reason was because a lot of people use Uniswap, and a lot of people contact Uniswap with issues. And a lot of those issues usually have to do with wallets, especially MetaMask. So Uniswap basically said, well, if we can just create a better wallet that we can kind of tell users to use when they have issues with other wallets that we can control end to end, then that's a positive for Uniswap's users. And also, obviously, Uniswap will be able to take a cut off the top if they have a swap feature inside the Uniswap wallet, so they could take a little bit of a fee, and that's a revenue driver for them. So yeah, it became a no-brainer for them to develop something like this. Now, whether this is going to be successful or not is up to the market. I think it's going to be successful because Uniswap has such a strong brand. And then they can just, anyone who has issues with other wallets, they can basically say, hey, come use Uniswap wallet. Here you go. You can import your seed phrase into it, and then you can just use it, and everything's the same. And a lot of people who obviously are using Uniswap are newer people as well, so they aren't married to the wallet that they have. There's no network effect around that. It's just the first one that they saw and the first one that they used. So yeah, I definitely resonate with the, I guess, reasoning behind this. I do wish that it was a smart contract wallet, but I think that the smart contract wallets and account abstraction wallets still aren't there yet. And maybe Uniswap will convert that wallet, or at least give users the option to convert their wallet to that eventually. But we'll see. We'll see how that shakes out. But yeah, as I said, this is a limited release right now. I believe that it's very hard to get access to this because test flight is limited to 10,000 people, and I think that I think that there's already 10,000 people that are using it. It is kind of being held up to be released on the iOS App Store as well, because Apple has not approved the app to be released just yet. Not sure if this is going to come to Android. Maybe it will, but I guess like it's up to them to release it on Android when the time is right. But yeah, right now you probably can't get access to it. But as I said, I have gotten access to it. I used it. I used it just to watch my Sassel.eth wallet. I didn't import any other wallets into it. But as I said, it seems very similar to Rainbow Wallet in how it displays things. It's got an NFT section and it displays NFTs very similar to Rainbow Wallet. But yeah, I think this is going to be something that's successful for Uniswap, given that their brand and the user base is so big already, and they can funnel users into it. So yeah. But anyway, you can check this out for yourself. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, next up, we have a thread here from Swagtimus, who says, our alpha testnet just launched, and yet Scroll's amazing developer community has already managed to build 5 fun apps for you to try out right now. Here's what you can do on the Scroll's alpha testnet. So I did mention Scroll's girly testnet launched just before in the episode. So yeah, if you're looking for things to do, well, here's a thread from Swagtimus to show you what to do on there, and the apps that are on there, and the things that people have already built. This was put out on March 4th, so I'm sure there's a lot more stuff on there as well. Swagtimus is a great follow for all things Scroll and all things Ethereum generally, so I definitely suggest giving him a follow too here. But yeah, this is just stuff for you to do. I've yet to play around with the testnet because I obviously was traveling and I haven't gotten around to it yet. I'm definitely going to do it probably after I finish recording here. Scroll is just kicking goals with what they're doing with their ZKVM stuff, and yeah, so definitely go check out this thread. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, so the Atlas release, so Rocket Pool Atlas release that I spoke about just before. So they put out an update around this, basically a long blog post, one of those great Rocket Pool blog posts explaining everything that's happening in the Atlas upgrade here. And the alpha from that blog post is that they're targeting a mainnet Atlas release for the end of March/early April. So this will be going live in time for the staked ETH withdrawals on mainnet. And with the Atlas release, obviously comes withdrawals for Rocket Pool node operators. At least I'm pretty sure it does, from what I read, if I remember correctly here, as well as the ability to migrate 16 ETH mini pools to 8 ETH mini pools as a current node operator, but also just spin up your own mini pool only using 8 ETH plus 10% of that as RPL tokens as well. So this is one of Rocket Pool's biggest upgrades in history. It is coming very soon, as I said, end of March, early April. So I'm super excited about this. I'm super excited to convert my mini pools into 8 ETH mini pools and issue and get some more RETH out there and get some more scalability of the Rocket Pool protocol. Because as I said before, guys, like we need to, I guess, diversify ETH staking out more. Lido is over 30% again. We need to get that down. We have a perfect opportunity with staked ETH withdrawals going live to funnel people into decentralized solutions like Rocket Pool, like solo staking, like Stakewise V3, instead of going to these centralized solutions. I really don't have, like, as you guys know, like I don't hate Lido like a lot of other people do. I think that Lido is just a consequence of us not building good enough tools for us to make it easier for people to stake in a decentralized way instead of a centralized way. So they are basically just a final boss for us, maybe not a final boss, but like a big boss for us to beat, for us to get their market share down to at least under 20%. I know it seems like a tall order, but we can get there, guys. With all the stuff coming online within the Ethereum staking ecosystem, not just the Rocket Pool Atlas upgrade, but things being built on top of Rocket Pool, like Node Set, solo staking getting easier, Stakewise V3, like Swell Network, other staking ecosystems coming online, and more, I guess, solo staking is coming online as well, because I'm sure there's a decent chunk of people who have since staking their ETH, they've stacked, or maybe they staked it with one of these centralized providers, whether they be centralized exchanges or Lido, and they don't want to cash out of the LSD because they feel like, okay, well, there's no point taking even a slight discount because I'll just wait and then I'll redeem it from the Beacon chain, and then with the extra ETH that I've stacked, I'll become a solo staker, or I'll stake with Rocket Pool, or I'll stake with this, or stake with that, because Rocket Pool hasn't actually been on mainnet very long, guys. Like it actually came much later in the Ethereum staking lifecycle than a lot of the other solutions did. But now that they're live, now that they're improving all the time with the Atlas upgrade going live, I'm sure we're going to see Rocket Pool rocket up in adoption post Shanghai. And I'm definitely going to be one of the people that keep encouraging people to stake with Rocket Pool or stake, as a solo staker. Don't go with Lido. They've already got enough market share. As I said, I don't hate Lido. I don't think they're they're evil actors or anything like that, but they're over 30%. They definitely have enough market share. Let's encourage people to stake with other services here, which is exactly what I'm going to be doing. But anyway, if you want to read the full breakdown of Atlas for yourself, I'll link this in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, so there was a book that was available at, ETH Denver, if you were able to find one, called Stuff That Crypto OGs Know. Now, this book was put together by Kevin Owocki and some of the Gitcoin team, and I had a passage in there that I basically put together for Kevin. He asked me to write something about, what does a crypto OG know? Obviously, I am a crypto OG these days, I guess, by definition, but the book itself was really great. So if you were able to get your hands on it, it was great. I don't know if there's an ebook. Maybe there is an ebook out there, but the book itself talks a lot about not just, it doesn't just have kind of like passages from different people, but it talks a lot about what a crypto OG knows from a variety of different angles here. But I guess just to read out what I put in there, it's not too long, but something that I think a lot of you can resonate with. This is what I wrote in the Stuff That Crypto OGs Know book. I said, and I quote, "I first got into the crypto industry in 2013 when it was very nascent and Bitcoin was the only real game in town. I was young and relatively strapped for cash at the time, around 21 years of age with not more than a couple $1,000s to my name, but I decided to put around half of my money into BTC. Of course, I then proceeded to make the mistake that most first cyclers make. I tried to trade my way to more BTC and in the process lost around 90% of what I originally put in. Due to this and due to the crash of BTC after MT Gox collapsed, I decided to cut my losses and exit the crypto industry altogether in early to mid 2014. It wasn't until early 2017 that I discovered Ethereum and became absolutely obsessed with it for two reasons. Proof of stake was incredibly fascinating to me, and the ability to actually build novel decentralized applications spoke to the technologists within me. But those 3 years that I wasn't around for cost me dearly, since I missed out on things like the Ethereum ICO and missed out on being part of the earliest days of the Ethereum experiment, something that I still regret to this day, even in the face of all the success that I've had. The biggest takeaway from my journey in crypto so far has been that sticking around in a bear market is the single best thing that you can do. All the opportunities lie in the bear market because all the quote-unquote tourists of the bull market have disappeared, and what's left are the real builders producing real value. With this comes the opportunity to invest both time and capital into things being built, which can pay off greatly once the tourists return. My own experience here is a testament to this, and sticking around in the 2018/2019 bear market was the single best decision of my entire life. Though in saying that, the only reason I was able to make the decision to stick around was because I learned from my mistakes in 2014 and was determined to not repeat them. So yeah, I guess the gist of this, guys, is that learn from the OGs, right? Learn from my mistakes. Stick around in the bear markets. Stick around in Ethereum. Build things. If you're a builder, if you're an educator, educate. If you are an investor, invest. It doesn't matter. Just do things, guys. Like, don't leave. That's what I beg of a lot of people that are into crypto. I'm like, don't leave. You're going to regret it. I know you're going to regret it. Especially if you're interested in the technology side of things. You're not just interested in the money side of things. You're definitely going to regret it from a number of different factors there. But yeah, I hope that speaks to you guys. I'll link it in the YouTube description for you if you want to read it as well. But yeah, I'm not sure if the actual book is available as an ebook. I'll have to find out about that. But yeah, it was available physically at ETH Denver. All right, next up, we have an update from Gitcoin. So they've put out a tweet here where they said, Gitcoin is evolving. We are proud to launch our new microsite, a hub for all things related to public goods funding. Explore the future of Gitcoin. So yeah, the new site is live at gitcoin.co. It is quite smooth. It's a lot better than the old site. I remember the old site was a bit clunky. It didn't really get the message across of what Gitcoin is trying to do, whereas this one is definitely totally different. So yeah, you can go check this out for yourself, as I said, at gitcoin.co. There are different sections here. So that obviously scroll down throughout the page. You can check out the grant stack, how it all works. You can join. You can sign up down the bottom, I think it is. Yeah, sign up for info here and everything in between. And there's also a bunch of links down the bottom as well. So really cool to see that Gitcoin got an overhaul here. And there's also a little thread talking about what their new microsite has made it simple. So it's made it simple to run a grants program, apply to be a grantee, donate to your favorite projects, and build on Gitcoin's new protocol. So what Gitcoin is actually going for here is basically being rebuilt and reimagined as a protocol first, rather than some kind of like centralized org that was controlling everything. So being out, spinning up as a protocol first, I think makes a lot of sense because it means that other people can build on top of it. It becomes more of a credibly neutral kind of public good itself, right? Because Gitcoin as a platform itself enables a lot of public goods funding, but it needs to be a public good itself if it wants to scale that out. So very, very cool to see this. As I said, you can check it out for yourself at gitcoin.co, and I'll link the thread as well in the YouTube description below. All right, so a pretty big announcement that happened during ETH Denver was that Amin Soleimani, who's been around for quite a while in the Ethereum ecosystem, has announced the launch of something called privacy pools, which he's billing as a fix to Tornado Cash. So basically, privacy pools is essentially a fork, I believe, of Tornado Cash, or at least very similar design to Tornado Cash here, that basically allows you to prove to regulators that you aren't enabling kind of, I guess, like terrorism financing and things like that. And the way it achieves this is by being able to exclude those people from, I guess, like your anonymity set, or those groups from your anonymity set. And so the demo is here in this tweet at privacypools.com is where the service lives. So basically, users have the option to help regulators isolate illicit funds without revealing their entire transaction history. And Amin in the demo explains how this works and how you can actually isolate the funds, and so you're not using them when you're mixing. And you also got a way to kind of prove that cryptographically to regulators as well. So this is very, very cool. I like the feature of being able to exclude certain deposits from your anonymity set so that you're not enabling any kind of like terrorism financing and things like that. Though I do think it might be a bit of a slippery slope. And the reason why I say this and what I mean by this is that basically by excluding, I guess, for example, let's say it's North Korea or something, right? The addresses have been identified as North Korea and they're part of the anonymity set here. By excluding them, you're essentially, and it doesn't have to be North Korea, it could be anyone, but by excluding a party that has been designated as, I guess, like something that's been sanctioned or an illegal entity or whatever it is by the US government, what you're essentially doing is outsourcing your, I guess, who you're willing to do business with to the US government, I guess. And as a US citizen, you have to abide by that legally. There is no way around that. But the slippery slope that I'm talking about here is where does it stop, right? Like, so for example, if you're in some kind of jurisdiction where they have, for some reason, deemed a group that is, I don't know, some progressive group that wouldn't be deemed as an illegal group or as a terrorist group in any other jurisdiction, but they are because maybe you have an oppressive government, and you have to basically abide by those rules, essentially you're cutting off a group that needs access to this sorts of stuff to fight back against oppressive regimes and things like that. So it does become a slippery slope, I think, as you kind of go down that reasoning there. But in saying that, I still think this tool is obviously very cool, and I still think this is an evolution of Tornado Cash because it gives users a choice. It doesn't force users to be in the same pool as these actors that they don't want to be in the pool with, so they can exclude them themselves. So if you go to privacypools.com, you can actually check this out. Check this out for yourself and play around with it on your own. As far as I know, and this isn't legal advice or anything like that, but as far as I know, because this is a new set of contracts and these contracts haven't been sanctioned by OFAC, as a US person or a US citizen, you wouldn't be in violation of any existing kind of sanctions or laws here. But as I said, that is not legal advice. I would recommend checking with your own lawyer or with your own kind of legal advice before interacting with this yourself, but that's my understanding of how these things work. And I believe he lives in the US. He does. He has property in the US, so he's definitely considered a US citizen. And he was comfortable using this. So, and I'm sure he has lawyers that he's spoken to about this. But again, if you're concerned and you should if you're worried about things and you want to get your own clarity, it's more than prudent to do that yourself. But yeah, cool to see another similar privacy tool live on Optimism. It's not actually live on Ethereum mainnet. It's live on Optimism here. And as far as I know, Optimism hasn't blacklisted this or anything like that. It hasn't censored this, which they could, obviously, because Optimism runs the only sequencer on the optimistic Ethereum network. So they could easily blacklist this themselves, and this wouldn't, it definitely wouldn't be able to be used. And I'm sure they would if it was actually sanctioned. Like if OFAC came out and said that they were sanctioning the set of contracts that power privacy pools here, well, Optimism would instantly, like, I'm not even, like, this is 100% certainty, I'd put money on this, they would instantly censor these sets of contracts because they have to. Like, there is no way around it for them. When running a centralized sequencer runs this risk here, and that's why obviously we want to decentralize sequencers, because it's better for censorship resistance and things like that. But right now, as far as I know, this is still live and working, so you can go check it out for yourself at privacypools.com. As I said, like, from my understanding, there is nothing illegal about interacting with this because OFAC has not sanctioned these contracts and there is no law against it. But that's my understanding of it. I would suggest getting your own kind of legal advice on this, especially if you're a US person. All right, so moving on here, we have a tweet from Matt Feinstein, which I thought was a really, really great tweet. So he said, people often say stuff like, I'm a decentralization maxi. I'd leave Ethereum if it no longer offered the strongest X guarantees. And then Matt says, I mostly disagree with this. I love Ethereum, its people, history, projects. If there was another game in town, I'd fight for Ethereum to improve. Sure, if every person, entity involved lost their soul, capitulated and left, Ethereum would cease to be Ethereum. But if it's just some work that needs to be done, we'd be able to course correct. That is the culture. And I strongly agree with this. And you know, people will call me an ETH maxi all the time, and I'm used to it by now. I don't care if people call me it. But yeah, I'm in this camp that Matt is in. Like, just because there is something that happens within the Ethereum, I guess, like ecosystem, and Ethereum no longer offers something that it offered before, doesn't mean that I'm going to abandon Ethereum and go somewhere else. I'm going to work on Ethereum. I'm going to work to rectify this issue on Ethereum. And I think the clearest example of this is what happened with the OFAC sanctions on Tornado Cash, which led to censorship on the Ethereum network via the MEV Boost relays. Now, if I had looked at that when it first happened and saw that 90% or 80%, I think it peaked out, of all blocks were being, of all blocks were censoring Tornado Cash transactions. If I looked at that and said, oh, well, Ethereum failed, we failed at censorship resistance, I'm going to move on now. Well, that would have been stupid, because as you guys know, we've actually gotten that number down to under 40% now, and we have a much more diverse relay infrastructure now, and we have a much stronger and more censorship resistant Ethereum now because of those sanctions. So that's what Matt is talking about here. That does, just because something happens in Ethereum that compromises on the guarantees that the Ethereum network offers, or maybe some kind of like ideals or values that the Ethereum community has, doesn't mean that it's going to always be like that. The Ethereum superpower is being adaptable to this sorts of stuff. Ethereum superpower is having a community that comes together and works on and fixes these issues. And I've always said this about Ethereum for as long as I can remember, and that's what keeps me in Ethereum rather than other ecosystems. I'm not just going to jump ship because something bad happens. There has been plenty of things that have happened in the Ethereum ecosystem that I thought were bad, or I thought that could be potentially existential for Ethereum. But then I take a step back and I think about it, and I'm like, you know what? The Ethereum community is strong enough to get past this. And I think that the OFAC sanctions was the biggest test that the Ethereum ecosystem has ever had. And we passed that test, in my opinion, with flying colors. We did so well, and we continue to improve here. And there's so much happening behind the scenes and so much research and development happening that, I think is amazing. And all the people that kind of were talking about how all the blocks were going to get censored, it was going to be 100% censorship on Ethereum, they're all dead silent now. None of them talk about the fact that it's under 40% of all blocks that have censored that are being censored right now for Tornado Cash transactions, obviously, and the fact that that's been coming down steadily over time. I remember I called the top on this a little while ago. I said, I believe 80% is the top. I believe it's going to be down only from here, and it has been. And we really hasn't even scratched the surface of the improvements that we can bring here. There's still plenty of opportunity for more of these non-censoring relays to come online. There's still plenty of research to be done and development to be done with things like similar to what happened with Flashbots coming out with Minbid, right? There's still lots of research and development happening on PBS, even though that's a little while away. I spoke to people at ETH Denver about this, and there's a lot of research and development happening with PBS right now. It's a wide open design space, and there's a lot of interesting and hard problems being worked on right now, and that alone will help a lot. And I think that the MEV space itself and the MEV Boost ecosystem with the relays and everything, people really want to figure out the best way to do this, because it doesn't just affect L1 Ethereum, it affects all L1s generally, but it affects L2s as well. Like MEV at L2s is the next frontier for MEV, and I think a lot of the research and development being done there is going to inform a lot about L1. And obviously the goal is to remove as much toxic MEV as possible and to decentralize and democratize the extraction of MEV that can't be removed. And I think that we have so many smart people working on it, so many people that consider it to be such a tough problem that if they can solve it, that's going to be a huge win for them personally, right? Imagine being the person or the group that solved MEV once and for all, basically, right? Solved all the negative externalities that happen with MEV. That is a huge claim to fame, and that is something that I think a lot of people will be very proud of if they were able to do it. So yeah, that's all happening in the background there. But yeah, that's just the perfect example of what Matt is talking about here, where the Ethereum ecosystem and the Ethereum community is so resilient that we can get past anything. I truly do believe that. I truly believe that there is nothing that can kill Ethereum at this point in time. I think that the Ethereum network itself is extremely resilient. I think that the Ethereum community is extremely resilient. And just because I think that nothing can kill Ethereum doesn't mean that I'm going to rest on my laurels and say, oh, well, you know, Ethereum is bulletproof, it's fine. No, I mean, I think that nothing can kill Ethereum, because anytime that something attempts a kill shot on Ethereum, it may damage Ethereum, it may severely damage it in some way or another, but the Ethereum community's ability to take that and run with it and fix it and not just rest on our laurels and not just lie down and let them kill us, so to speak, I think is Ethereum's superpower. So yeah, great tweet from Matt here that got my brain spinning a lot. And Matt really deeply cares about Ethereum. I mean, I spoke to him a bunch at ETH Denver, hung around with him. He's such a great guy. He's working on Tyco now. You guys will know him from Loopring and GameStop. He used to work at. He definitely is one of the quintessential Ethereans in the ecosystem. And yeah, so again, thanks to him for putting this tweet out. Got my brain spinning. All right, so another thread that got my brain absolutely spinning was this from Reizu. And this is a thread that's about, I guess, like 10 days old now, and you may have kind of read it already. But this thread talks about how Reizu believes that Coinbase is going to make USDC transfers free on their Base L2. Now, think about the implications of that for a sec. Technically, I mean, it's kind of hard to do this in such a way that works without gas subsidies. So, for example, the way this would be done, from my understanding, is that there would just be subsidies. So, transferring USDC on-chain wouldn't actually be free, because if you made it free, then it would just spam the chain, and there is a potential for DDoS attacks and things like that. But it would be free from the end user's perspective, where they basically got a rebate. And the rebate would work, technically, I'm not exactly sure how it would work, but essentially what it would mean is that you would pay a fee and then you'd get that back, because at the end of the day, the only organization running a sequencer is Coinbase. So you're paying the fee to Coinbase themselves, right? And then Coinbase would just reimburse that and they will just eat the cost. And the reason why they would do this, well, there's lots of reasons, right? The fact that they could instantly make Base a free payments layer for USDC for everyone would be an absolutely massive kind of adoption driver, because people would go there, they'd flock there, and they'd use it as payments infrastructure. You wouldn't use any of the other chains because it would be more expensive, because it's not free. Even if it's only 1 cent, 2 cents, whatever it is to send it around, it would still be more expensive. And I know USDC, there's been a bit of drama around it over the last 48 hours. I'm going to talk about that at the end, because as I said, I'm going through these updates as they came out, and this is from March 3rd. But yeah, I'm not ignoring the elephant in the room here about USDC. I'm just going to talk about that a bit later. But anyway, this I think would be just a huge adoption driver for Base, and obviously stablecoins, especially USDC, is so deeply integrated within DeFi that it would be a huge adoption driver, not just for payments on Base as a L2, but the DeFi ecosystem that's on there. I truly do believe that once Base goes live on mainnet, is going to quickly become the biggest L2, and is going to bring in a lot of new users on chain that weren't brought in before. So this is definitely something that I can see happening. It hasn't been confirmed or anything. This was just Reizu kind of speculating, but I think it would be a massive missed opportunity for Coinbase not to do this, even if it's only temporary, because obviously the costs can add up, because even though I guess like it's quote unquote free for Coinbase to do this, it's not, because they're still processing the transactions themselves and they're still using some compute power on their sequencer to do so. But they're already doing that for the whole network anyway. So it wouldn't cost them that much to do this, and they would actually get back the value in Base getting, I guess, adoption from USDC transfers being free, than the money that they'll pay out in kind of subsidies here. So I can see this happening. As I said, just speculation right now, but definitely an opportunity that I believe Coinbase would seize in a heartbeat, because it would allow them to, as I said, get adoption on Base very, very quickly, and allow them to basically dominate the payments and be very good for USDC adoption as well. So yeah, it remains to be seen if they'll do this or not, but my money's on yes. I think they will do this. I think this is a genius idea, and yeah, kudos to Reizu for putting out this thread. All right, so speaking of payments infrastructure, Ryan Berkman's here had a great thread about CBDCs. So he said, saying all CBDCs are created equally is as stupid as saying all stablecoins are created equally. Australia's new CBDC pilot is on an ETH L2, not a private government-run L1. This is great. It recognizes the value of our L1 and enables future permissionless bridging/use like USDC. So CBDCs obviously get a pretty bad rap, and I think for good reasons. A lot of CBDCs definitely look very dystopian, look very, very controlling. It looks like something that you would see in a movie about how the government controls all of your finances. But as Ryan says here, not all of them are created equally. There are going to be CBDCs that look very dystopian. Maybe the ones are kind of like in China, as Ryan says here. You know, it's a private system run totally by the governments. And then there are going to be many different shades of gray of CBDCs. And then there are going to be totally kind of like USDC style CBDCs, which basically act like USDC in that it's open to everyone. There's no KYC required to use them. And it's interoperable with DeFi, and there's no kind of like whitelist or blacklist or anything like, oh, well, I mean, there is a blacklist, definitely, because USDC has a blacklisting function, but there's no kind of whitelisting function where you have to be approved to use it, sort of thing. So I definitely think that Ryan's hitting the nail on the head here with this. And if you think that all CBDCs are going to be the same, yeah, I don't think you're paying attention, that's for sure. But anyway, I'll link this thread in the YouTube description below for you to check out for yourself. All right, moving on. So Kraken is apparently launching a bank. So they've said here that Kraken Bank is not yet open, but on its way. The offering will initially be available to existing Kraken clients in the USA with potential international expansion in the future. And you can subscribe for updates at kraken.com/bank. So you can see this is a landing page they've got here about this, and they're calling it one of a safe and sound kind of bank designed for crypto. So it's going to be based in Wyoming. And they say here, the Wyoming SPDI framework allows Kraken Bank to prioritize asset custody and safekeeping, data protection, security standards, and stringent regulatory oversight. SPDI banks are required to maintain full reserves, which means your money won't be lent out without your permission. And then they continue by saying a better bridge. Kraken's mission is to promote the adoption of digital assets for financial freedom. Kraken Bank will further that mission by providing a more seamless integration between crypto and the traditional finance system. This means a better client experience. So this is pretty cool. It's pretty cool because it allows, as they mentioned here, Kraken to be more interoperable between the traditional finance system and the crypto system. It allows them to own basically the end-to-end experience there, which means that the fiat deposits and withdrawals can be a lot faster. They can have full visibility over this and allow people to kind of like get in and out in a much more effective and efficient way here. They're not going to have to rely on a third party for their banking infrastructure. They're going to be able to control it all themselves and be able to control the inflows and outflows themselves, which is very cool. And just generally, I think this is a good idea for all exchanges to do, honestly. I mean, Kraken obviously being one of the biggest in the US is promising, but I'm sure Coinbase is looking into stuff like this as well, because imagine Coinbase being able to essentially have their own bank and then have USDC, or at least the assets backing USDC, custodied in there, and allow them to do things that they're already doing, like buying treasuries and being able to diversify them across not just their own bank, but like other banks as well. And as I said, I'm going to talk about USDC in a bit because that's been the talk of the town over the last 48 hours. But yeah, just wanted to put this on your radar. As I said, you can sign up for updates here at kraken.com/bank at the top. You can see here, and I'll link this in the YouTube description as well for you to check out. All right, so a fresh massive raise from Scroll. So Scroll announced that they have raised $50 million in a new funding round at a $1.8 billion valuation. Now, I should disclose here that I am an investor in Scroll, not this round, their previous round here, but this is a pretty big raise in, I guess, like a bear market, right? And as I mentioned at the beginning of the refuel of this episode, I think Ethereum as an ecosystem has transcended bull and bear markets, because you don't see these valuations in, those quote unquote normal bear markets. But it makes sense. I think, as I've said before, the winning L2s are going to easily be worth north of $10 billion, I believe. Optimism is already there, even though the OP token, its distribution right now is quite bad, I guess, because there's only like 5 or 6% circulating, and most of the tokens aren't circulating. But Polygon, Matic is worth around $10 billion. I believe Arbitrum's last funding round, what is it, $1 billion valuation, Scroll at 1.8 billion. There's a bunch of others out there as well. Starkway, I believe, was over $1 billion too. So the L2s themselves, yeah, anywhere from 5, 10, 15 billion, I think is going to be what they're all kind of maybe going to settle around. And yeah, it just depends where they go from there. It depends on their token distribution looks like. It depends how much adoption they get. Obviously, as you guys know, I don't believe that all of the L2s, their generalized L2s are going to succeed and have like massive market share long term. There will be some very big winners, but yeah, anyway. So this round had participation from a bunch of different investors here. As I said, $50 million raised. The investors include Polychain Capital, Sequoia China, Bain Capital Crypto, More Capital Management, Variant Fund, Newman Capital, IOSG Ventures, Quimming Venture Partners, and a bunch of others here as well. So the last funding round that Scroll did was their $33 million Series A round, I believe, because I believe this is a Series B round here, and that's the one that I was in, just disclosure there, and they've raised $83 million to date. So congrats to them on this big raise. I think it's going to obviously give them a lot of runway to keep executing on their goals, and I mentioned on this episode that Scroll's Girly testnet is live, mainnet hopefully sooner rather than later here. All right, so there was a bit of just chatter a few days ago about this new kind of thing called RollKit, which was I guess like a framework for sovereign rollups on Bitcoin. Now, I've talked about sovereign rollups before and about how there's a bunch of projects working on this, such as Sovereign and Celestia, and I believe Fuel Labs is doing a bunch of stuff here. But I think there's a lot of confusion. So this thread from Sriram, who's one of the founders of EigenLayer, does a really great job of breaking this down. So I'll link this thread in the YouTube description below. But the TLDR here is that a sovereign rollup is very different to I guess, like normal rollup. So I'll explain the reason why. So, and in the context of Bitcoin. So what can this do? Well, basically, with Taproot, Bitcoin allows for data to be stored now on chain for a certain amount of time. So it's basically like rough equivalent of EIP 4844 on Ethereum with Taproot on Bitcoin. Now, this has led to things like ordinals or NFTs on Bitcoin, and now because it's just an arbitrary data field, you can also do sovereign rollups on Bitcoin. Now, is this going to be anything of a big deal in its current form? I don't actually think so, because you're very much limited by Bitcoin's throughput. So you have like 10-minute block times and 4 megabyte block size, which doesn't give you much throughput at all. But essentially how it would work is that it would work similar to a reverse Validium type construction, where you would store the data on chain. So you would store the data on Bitcoin, and then you would have a proof kind of off chain, but you don't really have a proof off chain because it's kind of, it doesn't really make much sense to do that, because of the fact is that having the proof off chain basically just means that you're creating a new, I guess, you're not creating a new L1, but you're creating a new kind of, a security set outside of Bitcoin. So without confusing the issue too much here, what you're doing with this is that basically you're putting the data on Bitcoin, which doesn't give you any of Bitcoin's security or decentralization guarantees over anything except the data. Now, if you wanted to create, and if you create the rollup off chain itself, which it is off chain, you're only storing the data on chain. Essentially, what happens is that the security, because you can't you can't use validity proofs or fraud proofs on Bitcoin on layer 1. The security assumption is the weakest link, which is the new kind of like off chain security that you have, which is essentially going to be a multi-sig. So basically, when it comes to rollups, if a rollup wants to inherit the security of a base layer, the bridge has to be, so the bridge where the assets are stored has to be on layer 1 Ethereum, and it has to have a validity proof or a fraud proof mechanism. So for example, Optimism and Arbitrum, they have their bridge on layer 1 Ethereum. They store both their data and their proof on there. And that way they inherit Ethereum's decentralization and security, because you are able to use the fraud proofs on layer 1 Ethereum, and you don't have to rely on anything else. It's all on chain, right? The data and the proof is on chain. You don't have to rely on any kind of like off chain stuff. You don't have to rely on Oracle or a multi-sig, an off chain multi-sig. I mean, obviously right now Arbitrum and Optimism's fraud proofs are behind a multi-sig, but that's a different kind of thing going on there. So yeah, that's basically what this is. So The TLDR is that this is technically correct calling it a sovereign rollup, because a rollup just refers to rolling up the data and putting it on chain, but it is not equivalent to a rollup that we know, whether it be an optimistic or ZK rollup, because it only stores its data on chain. Bitcoin cannot prove the validity of the bridge. It cannot have fraud proofs or validity proofs, and that means that the bridge has to be, or the funds have to essentially be stored off Bitcoin, so it doesn't inherit Bitcoin security here. Hopefully that is a good explanation. It can be confusing, so as I said, like, this thread from Shreya was the best that I read on the topic, so you can go check it out, but that's basically what it is. Is this going to be anything important or cool? I don't think so. I think the throughput limitations alone is going to basically make this something that's not attractive for people to develop on, and the costs will actually go up pretty quickly because there's not that much space. As I said, 4 megabytes every 10 minutes. This isn't 4 megabytes every 12 seconds like in Ethereum. This is okay, Ethereum block times are 12 seconds, but it's not 4 megabytes per block, but this is 4 megabytes every 10 minutes. And I think Shreya actually did the math here on what that throughput would actually look like. And I believe that it's something like 30 kilobytes or something very, very small. So definitely not anything that's going to be a big deal. I guess it's kind of cool that you can do this, but yeah, I don't think that it's going to be that much of a deal for Bitcoin, because Bitcoin as a data availability layer is not very good. And here's the tweet here. So the only way to get full Bitcoin security requires writing all data to Bitcoin, and the block limit is 4 megabytes / 10 minutes, so the data rate is 53 kilobytes per second, or kilobits per second, which is not great. It is very, very limited in throughput here. And it is no way competing with Ethereum. It really is just competing with itself. And I honestly don't think that it's that big of a deal, but it's, I guess, fun that people can do this right now. And it's just another data availability layer that people could take advantage of if they wanted to. All right, so something that was announced here by Venkatesh Rao and Tim Baiko put out a thread about this as well. So Venkatesh today announced, or I guess not today, a few days ago, announced something called the Summer of Protocols program, along with a draft of the pilot study that led to it, which is called the Unreasonable Sufficiency of Protocols, which I've been working on with a bunch of collaborators for the last 3 months. And then Tim has a thread where he says, after sitting on this for months, I'm thrilled we're finally announcing summerofprotocols.com, an 18-week program led by the one and only Venkatesh here, with the goal of improving protocol literacy, or how to even think about protocols and their thorny questions. So if this is something that you may be interested in or sounds interesting to you, you can definitely go apply here. It is quite deep in the weeds. It's basically all about protocols generally and how protocols work, how they can be improved, what value they bring to the world, and all that good stuff there. So if you're interested in that, you can go check this out and read more about it. I will link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, so we have a new roadmap page on the Ethereum.org website here, which basically covers everything that Vitalik has put out in his flowcharts, or roadmap flowcharts that I've covered before. So this is great. This is at Ethereum.org/en/roadmap, and you can actually see all different sections on the roadmap here. So if you want to learn about how we can reduce fees within Ethereum on the roadmap and just scaling Ethereum in general, well, this page is for you, and it's done in kind of like a plain English summary way where you can click through and obviously learn more about Ethereum security, better user experiences, future-proofing, how the roadmap is defined, and all the good stuff there. So just another banger page here from the Ethereum.org team to learn about all things Ethereum. And of course, the Ethereum roadmap is probably, if not the most important thing to learn about, because it is not set in stone, but a lot of these things are definitely being worked on right now in parallel. I've talked about all of them before, like the merge, the surge, the scourge, the verge, the purge, and the splurge. There's a lot of work being done on the surge right now with EIP 4844 and related upgrades. The scourge, a lot of the things around MEV and PBS and stuff like that. The verge with Verkle trees definitely being worked on. The purge and the splurge, there are some things happening there, but they are probably, as I've said before, this isn't a sequential thing. Everything's being worked on in parallel, but the purge and the splurge is definitely further out than any of the other stuff on this list right now. But yeah, it's all being worked on in parallel, as you can see. But if you want to learn more about each of these things, you can go to the new Ethereum.org roadmap section, which I will link in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, so another update out of the DeFi Llama ecosystem. They have launched a new DeFi Llama browser extension that enhances Etherscan with wallet tags, improves token pricing when browsing addresses, and protects you from scams. And you can get this on the Chrome web store here. I do have this installed. It's pretty cool to see the different tags on Etherscan and stuff like that, and seeing all of the cool little features here, like phishing link warnings, and what else did they say here? Improvements in token pricing and things like that. Actually, you can see in the thread what this looks like. So on Etherscan, you can see that there's a lot of different tags here that DeFi Llama has just basically injected there for you to check out. You can see that thousands of tokens are not priced on the standard Etherscan. But now with DeFi Llama, you can see. So you can see here on the left without DeFi Llama, the extension, on the right with DeFi Llama extension. And another feature is a small llama icon to show you if the URL you are visiting is trustworthy or is a scam site. I think that's probably going to be one of the biggest things for people, is that you can see here, llama here, that shows that which sites are scams, which sites are real. I think that's going to be a very big deal for a lot of people, especially the noobs in this ecosystem that can rather easily get, unfortunately, caught up in these scams. So yeah, you can go check out this extension for yourself. It's here. I'll link it in the YouTube description below, of course, for you to do so. But yeah, as I said, I installed this. It's very cool. I like everything that it's doing. I like the Etherscan features for sure. And it's just another great product out of the DeFi Llama ecosystem here. All right, so another announcement out of Coinbase. So they've introduced something called Wallet as a Service, which they're saying it makes it easier for any company or brand to seamlessly onboard their users to Web3, even if they have never used cryptocurrency before. Wallet as a Service is a scalable and secure set of wallet infrastructure APIs, enabling companies to create and deploy fully customizable on-chain wallets. Users can create, access, and restore their wallets with authentication as simple as a username and password without needing to worry about a seed phrase. The wallets are deployed using Wallet as a Service use advanced multi-party computation for added security, helping keep user assets safe by securely dividing, encrypting, and distributing keys among multiple parties. There's a bunch of companies already building with Wallet as a Service to onboard users to Web3 experiences across gaming, token-gated events, and digital marketplaces. So just another big kind of like W or win here from Coinbase, another product that I think a lot of people are going to get a lot of value out of. Obviously, developers are going to be able to integrate this into their own products and services in order for users to get value out of it. And I think the cool part is MPC, because what MPC allows for is essentially self-custody, where you have one of the keys and then maybe the service has one of the keys and then Coinbase has one of the keys, and you could have this kind of recovery or this, I guess, social recovery being done here without any one party having full custody over your funds, which I think is very, very cool. Now, of course, if you lose your keys, it could still be restored if it's a 2 of 3 here. But if you lose your keys and say, for example, Coinbase lost your keys, which would be very unlikely, but if they did, then the funds would be frozen rather than, I guess, stolen. So I think it's a happy middle ground where essentially you have this kind of fallback with these other entities that could basically, sign things for you and not take custody of your funds, and it could even just require your signature as well, which I think would be very, very cool. So yeah, great job here from Coinbase releasing this for developers. I think they're going to get a lot of value out of it. All right, so a tweet here from Terrence sharing the latest research drop from Arbitrum. So a proposal to reduce the challenge window for the optimistic rollup protocol. So I've said before how the challenge window right now on Arbitrum and Optimism is 7 days, but there's no reason that this can't be reduced by a significant amount. So in this research post put together by Ed Felton and a bunch of comments from people here, which you can check out for yourself, they've been able to get this 7-day window down to, I believe, 2 hours and 18 minutes, which is absolutely awesome. And honestly, the fact that they can get this down so much speaks to the fact that the 7 days, I think, was ultra conservative to begin with. It definitely was something that was kind of thought of, let's just do 7 days because it's super conservative. It gives us enough time to spot fraud if we need it, but we can bring it down we can bring it down in the future to some kind of like much less of I guess like not 7 days, right? Much less time required to kind of have the challenge window here. Now this isn't live on Arbitrum or anything just yet, but if it does go live, 2 hours and 18 minutes, it means that if you're happy waiting 2 hours and 18 minutes to get your funds out, you don't have to go through a bridge or a third-party bridge. You can go through the official Arbitrum bridge, wait 2 hours and 18 minutes or whatever the time ends up being, and get your funds out without paying an additional fee and by going through the true canonical bridge itself, which obviously I think is very, very cool, especially in times of where you want to do like a emergency exit from the L2 for whatever reason. Instead of having to wait 7 days, you could potentially only have to wait around 2.5 hours, which is obviously very, very impressive. So you can go check out this research piece for yourself. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, so Index Corp launched a great new product, which actually speaks to me very nicely here. So they've introduced something called the Gitcoin Staked ETH Index, which allows you to diversify your portfolio, decentralize the network, and fund what matters. So what is this? Well, GTC ETH, which is the token ticker here, creates a sustainable source of funding for public goods via ETH staking rewards. Assuming a constant ETH price of $1,700, a TVL of $1 million will generate $17,500 of annual funding for Gitcoin grants, earning GTC ETH a top 10 spot in Gitcoin's funders leaderboard. So essentially what's happening under the hood is that GTC ETH is made up of 3 different liquid staking tokens, RETH, STETH, and SETH2. It uses the same methodology as DSETH, which I've spoken about before, but I think the rewards or portion of the rewards goes towards funding public goods, and that's why it speaks to me on such a deep level, is because I was thinking about doing something like this when I mentioned before with Stakewise V3 vaults, essentially redirecting a portion of the rewards or the fee that I would take from the Daily Gwei pool that I would do, and donating it to public goods. So very cool to see this new product from Index Corp, which of course you can go check out for yourself and buy. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, so a tweet here from Mario Havel, who I actually met in Denver, and he showed me this in person. So this is a device that he built, and you can see on my screen the picture here, that generates randomness from cats, and you can use it to contribute to the KZG ceremony. So you could grab one of these devices from Mario at ETH Denver, but I'm sure most of you didn't grab one, but I wanted to highlight this anyway. So he's calling this proof of cat. So essentially what it allows you to do is it allows you to give like a cat this little ball for them to play with, and then it's got a little board attached to it that generates randomness based on the cat's movements, and then you can actually submit this randomness to the KZG ceremony. So you can see here that Mario describes this by saying, Catropy implements proof of cat and enables secure cat random number generator. It comes in a soft ball of various colors, gray, blue, or pink your own, which enables generating randomness using movement. You can just play with it and secure Ethereum. And the KZG ceremony, I believe, is still ongoing. Let's bring this up here on my other tab. If I bring it up, yeah. So yeah, it is still ongoing for another 36 hours, it seems like. And there have been 73,000 total contributions. This is insane. This is crazy. I did say that I expected up to 100,000. We're almost there. I don't know if we're going to get there. Maybe we get to 80,000, but that's a very, very good turnout. But yeah, if you were lucky enough to get one of these devices from Mario, you were able to do kind of a proof of cat here for randomness, which I thought was very interesting. So that's why I wanted to highlight it there for you guys. But you can check this out for yourself. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. And if you haven't been able to submit to the KZG ceremony, you have another 36 hours to do so, or actually just under 36 hours to do so here. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to check out, of course. All right, last up here, we have an update from Llama. They've introduced something called Icicle, which is an open source GPU library for accelerating zero-knowledge proofs. Now, there's a blog post and a repo here, and they've actually introduced or have shown an example Rust application called Fast Dank Sharding. So you can check that out as well, and obviously it's in the blog post as well, and exactly what this is. But there's also a thread here with a funny little GIF and explaining exactly what it is. But the blog post does a better job here. So just wanted to highlight this for you guys, as hardware accelerated zero knowledge proof proving is definitely going to be a huge thing going forward, especially as ZKs get more and more sophisticated and ZKs become more and more of a thing within the Ethereum ecosystem. So just something for you to check out. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. All right, moving on to an announcement out of the ETH global ecosystem. So they've introduced something called Pragma. So basically, what Pragma is a one-day single track in-person summit hosted by ETH Global. With a focus on intimacy, Pragma serves as a hub for high-quality talks and a forum, as a forum of discussion for builders and leaders from the Ethereum ecosystem and beyond. Ethereum builders may recognize the name, as all blockchain programs start with a Pragma. And starting with Tokyo, all ETH Global Hackathons will as well. Pragma is not just the start of a builder's journey, but also a call towards pragmatism. Our hope is that Pragma will serve as the backbone of our pragmatic effort to bring Ethereum and Web3 to wider audiences and move the needle for the ecosystem. So essentially what it is, as I said, like a one-day event just before each of the ETH Global Hackathons in order to, I guess, set the tone and set the stage for what the hackathons is about, and have deeper conversations before the builders get going. So I think this is really cool. ETH Global, obviously one of the leaders, if not the leaders of hackathons in the crypto ecosystem here, creating another initiative that I think is going to bring a lot of value to a lot of people within the Ethereum ecosystem. So yeah, you can go check out the blog post for yourself. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, so there is a new testnet now live called Korstenen, which is a Verkle testnet. So this time with proofs in blocks that conform to the new consensus spec, and you can find the tooling and links here at this link, which I'll link in the YouTube description below if you want to be part of this. And I did mention before about how there's a lot of effort still going into Verkle trees and being built out, which we expect to be live on mainnet hopefully sometime next year. It's definitely the next big thing after EIP 4844, I believe, and it's coming along nicely. And as you can see, Parathosh is behind this testnet. He's one of the people that are running it and leading it here. So yeah, and Parathosh, for those of you who don't remember, was the guy that was doing all the shadow forks and still does. He does a lot of the testing for Ethereum infrastructure here. So yeah, you can go check this out for yourself. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, so I've spoken a lot about MEV Boost.pix in the past and highlighted Tony's work a lot on the refuel. So he announced that the data behind the MEV Boost.pix website is now open source and available almost in real time. The first published table contains info on every slot since the merge, MEV Boost, and the mapped block builders, validators, and relays. More tables to come. This is a pretty big deal. I mean, you can get the raw data now. Like if you go to MEV Boost.pix and you see the data that's on the website here, you can actually view the raw data for yourself and view the source on GitHub and download it all. So you can see that the ETH data is available right now. You can download it for yourself, and then coming soon is a bunch of other data that Tony has been tracking, and then you can go on the GitHub as well and check out everything for yourself. So great to see that this has been open sourced and it's available for everyone to kind of verify themselves and do their own kind of, I guess you could say, deep dive on it. And as you guys know, the MEVBoost.pix website is probably, it is the best website for keeping up with all things MEV, whether it's keeping up with relays, builders, validators, anything in between. This is definitely the site that you should be bookmarking and visiting if you're at all interested in MEV. And now you can do your own deep dive using the raw data and viewing the source on GitHub, which I'll, of course, link in the YouTube description below for you to check out. So I mentioned earlier how Tycho had shared their roadmap. So this roadmap is the core milestones on their way to Tycho mainnet. And they say here, Ethereum's commitment to rollups is strong and credible. Rollups' commitment to Ethereum ought to be the same. And then they've put some highlights in this thread, as well as a blog post. But the meat of the roadmap is in this image here, as you can see on my screen. So essentially, the roadmap is divvied up into 5 different sections with different dates. So the Alpha 1 testnet has been live since December. So then you can see what was included in that. In March, the Alpha 2 testnet is going live. I don't know if this is live just yet, but yeah, it's going live this month. In Q2, Q3 of this year, there's going to be more Alpha testnets, and you can see all the things that are included underneath there. In Q3, Q4, there's going to be several beta testnets, and then in early 2024, they're expecting mainnet to go live with all of the features listed underneath, such as permissionless proposers, permissionless provers, permissionless regular L2 nodes, full EVM circuits, complete fees and rewards design, the infinite garden of dApps, and being live on the Ethereum mainnet. So yeah, they're basically only live on a private L1 right now, and then the rest of their test nets will be going live on Sepolia with their mainnet, with their mainnet obviously being live on Ethereum mainnet early next year. But yeah, I'll link this blog post and this thread in the YouTube description below for you to check out. But great to see Tycho put their public roadmap out there so that we can all follow along with their progress and development of getting to a fully decentralized and permissionless mainnet in early 2024. All right, so God, I hate that I'm always having to like have this discussion here, but there was, I guess, like a few days ago, the New York Attorney General's office filed a lawsuit against the crypto exchange KuCoin, and they alleged that they sold securities such as ETH, Luna, and UST. So basically, the New York Attorney General's office is calling ETH a security here. Now, obviously, this set people off into like a spin, and they're like, oh my God, ETH's labeled a security, blah, blah, blah. No, that's not how it works. And Jake Shavinsky actually had a great tweet here where he said, no, ETH isn't a security just because someone makes an unfounded allegation, even if that someone is an enforcement agency in court. Agencies are like any other plaintiff. They can write whatever they want in a complaint. It may get some press, but it doesn't change a thing. So just because they say it's a security, even if Gary Gensler was to say that ETH is a security or that he believes ETH is a security, the American government is not a dictatorship. Gary Gensler is not the god king of America. He can't just declare whatever he wants. He has to go through the process, right? The due process. So if he wanted to label ETH as security, if anyone wanted to label ETH as a security, they would have to prove it in court. Honestly. And to prove it in court, it would be extremely hard, right? And even if they were able to get a settlement and say, not just for ETH, but for anything, where the party says, okay, well, yeah, this was a security at the time that we sold it in an ICO, but it's not a security anymore. There's not going to be many kind of like teams, especially the big teams that have issued tokens that are going to be willfully admitting that their thing is currently a security, right? Especially when it comes to ETH, where you can't actually go after anyone. There's no one to go, you can't go after the Ethereum Foundation. The Ethereum Foundation is not going to be a defendant in a case here. There's no other entity to go after. There's no centralized entity to go after if you were trying to get ETH labeled a security. So as I said, and as Jake says here, just because someone says or alleges that ETH is a security doesn't make it so. And honestly, I don't know if my tweet's here, but I basically tweeted out as well by saying that the dumbest stuff that I see on crypto Twitter is all the people saying that ETH is a security whenever some agency kind of files a report where they say or they allege that ETH is a security. That's not how it works at all. And I strongly believe that ETH is never going to be labeled a security. It is a commodity money, and it's going to remain that way. And I obviously believe that the SEC right now is a rogue agency, and I don't like Gary Gensler's approach to things, but not even he has the power to unilaterally decide that any crypto asset is a security, especially not one like ETH. So yeah, I wouldn't worry about this sort of stuff, guys. I would ignore it, honestly. A lot of the ETH haters, especially the Bitcoin maximalists, always use this to say, look, ETH is a security. No, it's not. And it's probably, as I said, I don't believe this is going to happen, but the only way, as I said, ETH is going to be labeled as security is if it is actually proven in court that it is a security, which it is not. It definitely isn't. I don't believe it is. There's a lot of people out there who don't believe it is and make an argument for it. And the only people that are saying that it's a security are the ones that don't like Ethereum, and that's just silly, right? That's not the way to do things. It's not the people to listen to. But yeah, it just pops up every now and again, and it gets me really frustrated because ETH is not a security, just because some agency says that it is or the alleges that it is doesn't make it so, as Jake has said here. All right, so Element Finance has brought out something that they're calling the Council Kit. So this is version 0.0.1 of the Council Kit, which is an SDK for launching, building, and maintaining DAOs and their governance systems on demand. It is fully documented with video and code tutorials and a customizable, themable UI. So you can go to council.element.fi to check this out for yourself and get started with it. There's a whole section here for getting started with it. Now, DAOs is one thing that I think is still going to take a while to kind of get to the point where we want them to get to, but there are a lot of things happening on this front, not just with the DAO I guess, infrastructure itself, but also the things that feed into it, such as decentralized identity, different token distributions, different experiments around token holder governance and stuff like that. It's all feeding into each other and it's all being worked on, I think, in parallel. But yeah, I mean, you guys know my general opinion on governance within crypto. I do believe that decentralized governance at scale is very, very hard to do, if not impossible to do, especially when it comes to on-chain governance. I personally prefer the model of having like a council where you have like a bunch of people and organizations working together. The founding team can be in there, but then there's other organizations working together to basically govern the protocol, so to speak. I think maybe the closest example of this is the Rocket Pool ODAO, where, the core Rocket Pool team has a few ODAO nodes. There's the Rocket Scientists, which is another team that builds with Rocket Pool. There are various community members. There are people that build on the Ethereum core protocol, like Lighthouse, for example, or Sigma Prime, I should say, for example. And then you have, core community members like myself and Superfears and a bunch of other people there that are kind of like governing the protocol as much as it can be governed, so to speak, with the ODAO stuff. I think that's the better model than basically having it so that everyone has a voice, so to speak, because at the end of the day, not everyone's voice is equal when it comes to protocols. Like, for example, if I went into a community where I have absolutely no idea what's going on, and I don't even know how the protocol works, why should my voice be worth the same as someone who spends every day in that ecosystem, right? Like, that doesn't make any sense at all. So yeah, I think that the most successful probably governance, or I guess like governance architectures, and the most successful protocols that integrate governance are the ones that use a council model. I believe that's truly going to be the way it is, especially for the foreseeable future. And tools like what Element Finance has brought out here will help a lot with that, I believe, as well. All right, so Coinbase has introduced a Web3 discovery, website called coinbase.com/Web3. I believe I talked about this, I think maybe a couple months ago, where they first brought this out or first talked about this. But basically, it's a way to explore the best dApps that Web3 has to offer, as they say here. They're all ranked and everything, and you can sort by different categories. This is definitely a really nice tool for noobs that don't really know where to start. If you don't know where to start with kind of collecting and swapping and earning and all that sorts of stuff, you can just click here and get started straight away. It also lists what networks these things are on. Yeah, I mean, I believe I did highlight this a couple months ago, but I believe that this is now live for anyone to kind of play around with, and it's much more fleshed out as well. And you've also got the different kind of rankings here as well. I don't know what these rankings are based on, and it's probably based on rating and the amount of people that use the actual service here. But yeah, this is really cool. Another banger product from Coinbase that they've brought out here, which you can check out, of course. I'll link it in the YouTube description below, or you can go to coinbase.com/web3. All right, so a new research post from Justin Drake here called Based Rollups. So basically the gist and the TLDR of based rollups is that Justin says here, we highlight a special subset of rollups we call based or L1 sequenced. The sequencing of such rollups, based sequencing, is maximally simple and inherits L1's liveness and decentralization. Moreover, based rollups are particularly economically aligned with their base L1. So this is very similar to, I think, enshrined rollups, which is a rollup concept that's been around for a while. Tezos is actually experimenting a lot with this. But the strict definition of what this is that a rollup is said to be based or L1 sequenced when its sequencing is driven by the base L1. More concretely, a based rollup is one where the next L1 proposer may, in collaboration with L1 searchers and builders, permissionlessly include the next rollup block as part of the next L1 block. So it's basically having a tight coupling between the rollup itself and L1 itself. And then Justin lists out the advantages and disadvantages of this model. So the biggest disadvantage of this model is that there's no MEV income for the rollup itself. It forgoes the MEV to the L1 validators, so to speak. And then there's constrained sequencing here as well. But those are basically the only two disadvantages that Justin has come up with. But there's a bunch of other advantages here, which is the same advantages you get from being on L1, such as liveness, decentralization, and simplicity. So I recommend giving this post a read. There's a bunch of replies here as well talking about this. It's very interesting, I think. And I think that the more experimentation we do with rollups, the better we're going to get, the better rollups we're going to get, because I think sequencing is definitely a big deal. Like, how do you decentralize a sequencer? What do you do with the MEV with the sequencers? How do you get the same guarantees that you get as L1? Well, based rollups or based or L1 sequence rollups are probably one of the paths that we can use to get there. But as I said, this is just a research post right now. It hasn't been developed or integrated or anything like that. But when Justin Drake puts out something, I listen, that's for sure. So I'll link this in the YouTube description below for you to check out. All right, so this is a really cool update from Bankless. So they're calling this Bankless 2.0, which is now live. So this is a brand new Bankless website, which is actually a really, really awesome website. This is not just your run-of-the-mill kind of like shitty website that's just been put together or thrown together. This is really, really awesome. It's very smooth. It's very responsive. You can actually log in with your kind of Ethereum address here. I've logged in with sassel.eth, and you can see it says here GM Sassel 0x. It's got and you can actually subscribe and become like what's called a citizen or a paid member, and then you get access to all these exclusive things. You got all the content down here, all the Bankless content. They just put their ETH Denver experience up, so maybe that's something you want to go check out after this refuel episode. Different tools. Yeah, I mean, I really love this website. It's great. I highly recommend giving it going to check it out. As I said, it's at bankless.com, and it really captures, I guess, the community feel and the community aspect of what Bankless is building here, because Bankless is not just a podcast. It's an ecosystem. They're doing so many really cool things. I'm sure you guys saw that they're doing a venture fund now as well. So they're doing a lot, that's for sure. And this is just a way for them to highlight everything that they're doing. So you can go check out Bankless's new website at bankless.com. All right, so Terrence from the Prylabs team, or I guess like the Arbitrum team now, put together a tweet thread where he said, "This is low-key the most interesting and important PR for the Ethereum protocol right now, which is called allow the execution layer to suggest local execution." So this is supposed to help with censorship resistance on Ethereum. And as Terrence says here, we want minimal censorship as possible from the builders and relayers. We have obviously solutions for that, but there's also this solution here in this PR, which, as I said, Terrence details a little bit in this thread, but also in the PR, there's a bit of a description about what this does. So as I said earlier, we're still working on ways to mitigate censorship on Ethereum that is a result of things like MEV and MEV Boost. And this is just another one of those things that I figured I would highlight for you guys. And yeah, as I said, we'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to learn more about. But yeah, I've got a few more updates to get through before I end today's mega episode. I'm getting pretty tired now, so I'm going to try and get through the last two things here. So just another update from Tony from the MEVBoost.pigs website, just saying that we already set a new record in MEV Boost payments per day, even larger than during the FTX fiasco. Proposers' earnings skyrocketed, and this was due to all of the volatility around USDC over the last 48 hours, which is going to be the last thing I talk about in just a sec. But unfortunately, my validators didn't propose a block during this, which kind of annoyed me because I was like, oh my God, there's so much kind of MEV being extracted right now. There are so many high proposer payments being paid out right now. I really hope that I propose a block. And of course I didn't. So maybe I'll propose a block today when gas is a lot lower. Gas was actually above 300 and above 200 Gwei for a little while there because there was so much MEV stuff happening due to the USDC depeg, which I guess is the perfect segue into the USDC depeg, which is the biggest news story, I think, over the last, for a while now, actually. So to give you a bit of a TLDR of what's happened here, USDC depegged from its usual dollar to under 90 cents because of a bunch of silly reasons. And I think that to give some context here, I have to go back to Friday, which is when you've probably heard of it by now, the Silicon Valley Bank, one of the largest banks in the US, was shut down and taken over by FDIC, which is an organization in the US that insures bank deposits, but also handles unwinding banks' deposits and getting them back to, or getting them into the hands of depositors in a timely fashion here. So essentially, the reason why USDC got caught up in all of this is because the USD, or at least the assets, not just the cash assets, but also the treasury bonds and things like that, are custodied with various US banks. And one of those banks was Silicon Valley Bank. So there was $3.3 billion worth of assets that are currently stuck on Silicon Valley Bank that are backing up USDC. Now, people took this to mean that those $3.3 billion worth of assets are gone. That is not what it is at all. The amount of assets that will be returned to Circle here, and of that $3.3 billion is probably almost 100% of that. Now, even if you take like one of the worst case scenarios where it's only 90%, that means that 10% of the assets will not be returned, which means that 10% of $3.3 billion is $330 million. So at worst, $330 million, there'll be a $330 million hole in the assets backing up USDC, which represents less than 1% of the assets backing USDC, which means that logically USDC should be trading at 99 cents, not under 90 cents. And even that $330 million hole would be easily filled by Circle themselves, who earned much more money than that off interest payments alone off of their treasury holdings, or the yield payments, I should say, off their treasury holdings. So the real hole is $0. So the reason why USDC depegged so much was because of fear and panic and traders taking advantage of it, right? And people not knowing what was going on. There's a lot of people comparing USDC to UST and to Terra, which is just a stupid comparison, but people do this stuff during times of fear and uncertainty, right? And also, Coinbase disabled direct redemptions of USDC for USD because banks are closed and they on the weekend, and they wouldn't be able to process all the withdrawals, so they basically just paused it, which means that the only way that USDC could actually go back up is if people buy USDC on the open market. They can't arbitrage they can't buy USDC for 90 cents and then redeem it for real USD and arbitrage that 10-cent price movement because the redemption function is closed. So that's why USDC is not trading at $1 right now. Come Monday morning, I strongly believe that USDC is going straight back to $1. The redemptions will be open. The redemptions will be fine. Circle will get most of the money back and from the Silicon Valley Bank, and then they're going to plug whatever hole there is with their own money, and everything's going to be fine. I don't believe that for a second that there's any risk that USDC is going to be, the assets backing USDC are going to be completely gone or insolvent, and that USDC is going to zero. I don't believe that at all. I understand people's fear and uncertainty, but I also think that if you use your brain a little bit and you actually look at everything that goes into this and all the facts around it, you would realize that this is a very temporary thing and it's going to get resolved very quickly. And if you're a savvy investor, or I guess like someone who likes taking a bit of risk, you can take advantage of this, which is what I did. I started buying USDC under 95 cents. I bought a bit under 90 cents. I haven't sold it yet. I'm going to wait until Monday. I'm going to wait until it goes back to $1, and then I'm going to sell it. And I'm going to make an instant 5 to 10% profit, and I'm going to roll that into ETH, and happy days for me. So yeah, if you have an appetite for that, I believe USDC is still trading at about 95 cents. But as I said, like, just understand that it's not like 100% risk-free. There is always a risk with everything that you do when it comes to speculative activities. But to me, I looked at it and I'm just like, people are crazy right now. There's no way that USDC is insolvent. There's no way that it's going under. It's totally fine. And I still believe that. So that's the TLDR of what happened there. But really, the real story had nothing to do with crypto. It had everything to do with Silicon Valley Bank and how it's a big bank for tech cos and crypto cos, and how they had a bank run essentially, and they weren't able to meet their obligations because of the fact that, if you know how fractional reserve banking works, no bank in the US holds most of their customer assets in cash. They actually buy treasuries or buy treasury bonds and things like that, or lend out the assets. And I think they're only legally required to hold 10% as cash. And post-pandemic, I believe it got changed to 0%. I don't know if that's been changed back yet. But yeah, you may be naive to think that banks hold it. And every single bank in the US, every single one, is subject to a bank run. They do not have the liquidity. And that's the thing I think a lot of people missed, is that this is not a solvency issue for Silicon Valley Bank. This is a liquidity issue where they just do not have the liquidity on hand straight away to process all withdrawals. But they can if they sell off their assets and get the cash equivalents for it. Now, of course, there is going to be a bit of a loss here because these treasuries that they bought when yields were lower, there's kind of I guess a mismatch here, because obviously the rates went up, the interest rates went up, and there is a mismatch here where they're holding these kind of underwater assets, and they may take a 5 to 10% hit. But that is, from what I've seen, the biggest hit that they will take from these things. So As I said, if you say that Circle will get back 90% of their assets from Silicon Valley Bank, there is a 10% hole of $330 million. They can easily cover that themselves. So in reality, there is not a hole at all in USDC and the backing of USDC. And USDC should logically be trading at $1, which I believe it will on Monday or early next week when this all gets kind of like ironed out. And Silicon Valley Bank is probably just going to get absorbed by another bank anyway. That's how these things work. Hopefully that explains it for you guys. But on that note, I think I'm going to end it there on this mega episode. So thank you all for sticking with me and listening and watching. Hopefully I can be back to our regularly scheduled programming tomorrow on Monday. I think I'm all good now. I've still got COVID, but as I said, like the coughing fits seem to have stopped and my energy levels are returning. But yeah, hope you enjoyed that episode and I'll catch you all tomorrow. But yeah, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel. As I said, I'll catch you all tomorrow. Thanks everyone.